All right, I'd like to welcome you to the July 3rd meeting of the Town of Kennebunkport Planning Board. This is a hybrid meeting, so there may be people on Zoom that will call in. I don't know if you have anybody out there at all.
We have Aubrey.
Okay. We have a pretty full board here, except that we've lost our chair, Tom. So before I go into any agenda, or anyone goes into any agenda, including the minutes, we have the task of electing a chair for the board.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to propose that if Nina is willing, that she be elected chair. I think she's served as vice chair for, I think, the entire time I've been on the board, and has kept us well organized. The times when Tom was absent, has a good command of the regulations and the ordinance. And again, if she's willing to serve, I'd like to nominate Nina Perlmutter.
Well, thank you.
I'd like to second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I'd like to make a motion that we elect Ed as the vice chair, since he's been a dutiful and diligent member of this board for a long time and could easily take over as the chair in my absence.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
We need one of the alternates to vote tonight. Any preference between you two?
No, I think there are no more alternates.
Yeah.
Right.
Are we completely out of alternate? Oh,
We
that's
have
right, Scott's
5.
not here.
Yeah.
Scott has
Okay, you're both
also
voting then.
resigned.
You're both full members of the board,
Yeah.
and you're entitled to.
All the privileges
Been sworn at.
and honors.
Right.
Okay,
That's right.
in that case, and I've already lost my
Didn't
agenda.
dodge that vote.
I'd like to go forward with approval of the minutes.
Madam Chair, we need to elect the secretary. Normally, this was Tricia Sanders, the staff that helps you with writing your minutes, so we just need a formal vote on that, if you want to keep her as the secretary.
Yes, okay. I didn't realize that we had to do that since she's elected by the town as well.
Yep.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes, I think just anecdotally that Tricia has done just an excellent job, you know,
She does. a
making
very-
sense of what sometimes is some very difficult back and forth. So
Yeah.
well done, Tricia, and as long as she's willing, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we can get to approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read them?
Yes,
Any changes? I don't think she changed anything.
she did make
She made
one set of revisions, but that was a week ago, and
Okay,
no changes
all
since
right
then.
then.
I move to accept the minutes as amended.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we have one substantive item on the agenda. That's the Lily Pond subdivision. This is a final subdivision application, and tonight we're going to have a public hearing. But before that, if the applicant, Michael, would come forward and give us a little review. I want to point out that we received information from you and received information from Acorn like 6 hours ago.
Yep.
Including an amended site plan. It's difficult for the members of the board to review that in that amount of time. Usually we expect 7 days beforehand. So I think you should expect that the public hearing will be continued. Okay, so the board members get a chance to thoroughly review that.
Okay, I'm gonna walk through in detail everything we've submitted, and
Excellent.
as far as plan changes, I think you'll find that they were just small tweaks requested at the last meeting, but I appreciate the sentiment, and I Yeah, with the quick turnaround on, from last meeting to this meeting, it was difficult to turn some of that stuff around, but understood. Anyways, let me start from the top. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Michael Tadema-Wieland. I'm a civil engineer with Teradyne Consultants. The applicant, Jeff Bowley, is here with me tonight, and as is the natural resources consultant, Jim Logan. Again, I'm just gonna touch on the things that have changed since we were here 2 weeks ago, what that sort of, those updates are. Number one, we provided a wetland report and plan on the pond, right? On the pond that is partially on the lot and partially on the abutting lot near the entrance. That was prepared by Longview Partners, Jim Logan, and the takeaway from that is it is not large enough to be classified as a wetland of special significance. In fact, it's not even close to being large enough to be classified as a wetland of special significance. So if there are questions on that, I might be able to try, but also Jim is here.
Are there copies of that available for the board to look at? We haven't received that.
Oh, it was sent to staff.
It was sent, we have
Can't
it
help that.
electronically, but there are no, hard copies, which makes it much easier to look at.
I just anecdotally became aware of some things are in the database, but I haven't received even an email notification of it.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
guys?
I received some from Acorn, but.
From
nothing-
Acorn, but no, this is a report
Yeah,
from Jim.
I haven't seen that yet
No.
at all.
It is on SharePoint, but it came in very late. So,
It is on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, again, with the quick turnaround, we got out there, did the field work as quickly as possible.
Okay, I'm
The-
just saying, just so
Understood.
you know.
I'll go into a little more detail then.
Okay, thanks.
So what the report does is it defines what a wetland of special significance is under the Natural Resource Protection Act. And then it describes the different components of the pond, and the pond is open water, is comprised of open water. It's comprised of shrub wetlands, and it's comprised of emergent wetland vegetation. In order to be classified as a wetland of special significance, it needs to contain 20,000 square feet or more of open water and or emergent vegetation, emergent wetland vegetation. And typically, you could think of those as cattails, right? If you see cattails, that's pretty indicative of emergent vegetation. Shrub is I think it's a pretty descriptive term. It's sort of that scrubby stuff that
it's woody
low bushes.
vegetation.
Sorry?
It's woody vegetation.
Exactly. So the open water was estimated to be approximately 11,700 square feet in size. And the emergent wetland vegetation was estimated to be 2,184. So combine those together, you're at approximately 14,000 square feet. So again, nowhere really close to being a wetland of special significance. I will note Acorn received this as part of their recent review and seemed to confirm the findings, or at least accept the findings as provided. There is a very well prepared map that goes along with this that's very easy to read.
Good.
It's very frankly disappointing that the board hasn't seen this, even though I know it came on short notice, but several days, I guess it's frustrating that the board doesn't even know this information is available, right?
Right.
That information was submitted on Friday at 11:28 a.m. So that was in your packet application on your SharePoint last Friday.
Okay. That's still less than 7 days.
It is.
Yep.
It's,
And we
I find
don't,
it a pretty easily
I don't-
digestible piece of information.
I have problems, Mike, with you basically laying blame on the code enforcement office for this. This is information we've asked for since the preliminary. So I think it's great that we have it now, but the fact that it came in Friday and we're just hearing about it, that's too bad, but
Understood,
there's a long history here.
understood.
and the other thing is the map that you sent, the new site plan. The Acorn letter that I read was referencing that site plan, but basically it's very hard to read electronically. You really have to have it spread out in front of you.
I'm sorry, what's hard to read?
The site plan?
Yeah.
It's very hard to read electronically. It's
Understood.
only an 8 by 10, more or less.
Oh, it's 24 by 36.
Yeah, if I have it
Right.
by mail.
No, I-
As a
right, so-
hard
sure,
copy.
understood.
It's much easier to read, and it's very hard to blow up.
Sorry, Jeff Bally, I'm the applicant. So I sent the email to Galen because Mike was on vacation last week. I got it from Jim and Bill, and I sent it over, and I said, if you need paper copies, I'm happy to print them out and bring them by the office for the board, so.
Thank you. We would appreciate that.
All right. So in addition to the wetland report, we did provide an email to Galen, again, very short notice. I'm not sure if any of you have seen it, and again, I think it's very easily digestible, so I'm just going to go right through it. If you have the benefit of having it, great. If not, I don't think it'll affect anything. So there were a series. Galen sent us an email after the last meeting with sort of a bullet list of items that needed to be addressed for the public hearing or for further review. And so I'll just go down that bullet list and talk about what we've done to address those. So the first one was the wetland of special significance delineation of the pond. And that was requested by Mr. Francis. And so the report I just referenced, which has been submitted, addresses that. The second one, requested by Ms. Perlmutter, Chair Perlmutter, pesticide use in HOA agreement, thinks pesticide use should not be allowed in the area close to uncleared areas of wetlands. So it's the applicant's belief that that condition, or I'm sorry, not that condition, but that performance standard has been met. The only place that the ordinance, that the subdivision regulations talk about this is right in the performance standards, section 415.11.1, subsection C. And it says the homeowners association covenants, this is a section on pollution, so these are performance standards on pollution.
I'm aware of this section.
Okay, well, for the benefit of others, I'll just read it. The homeowners association covenants will include a requirement to follow the guidelines in the most current edition of the best management practices for the application of turf pesticides and herbicides as published by the State of Maine Pesticides Control Board. So that's the performance standard related to pesticide use. And in summary, essentially, it requires the homeowners docs to refer to this or to require pesticide uses done in accordance with these guidelines. And so if you go to the homeowners documents that have been submitted, that reference is right in there. And so as the performance standards are intended to be evidence of meeting the review criteria, we're of the belief that what's in the homeowner's documents satisfies the requirements for pesticide control. The next item, again, I think this was Ms. Perlmutter's comment, buffer concerns for neighbors from vehicle lights from driveways. I believe the reference, the ordinance reference that you made at the last meeting was from the land use ordinance. And
That's
from
right,
the site
LUO
plan- The site plan design.
10.11.
Yeah. And where there's nothing in the subdivision regs regarding this, we don't feel that it's applicable.
I'm sorry, Mike, you're saying you think that the subdivision regs take precedence over the land use ordinance?
I'll
Not
get-
the land use ordinance, the site plan review section. Site plan review criteria are not applicable to subdivision review.
Oh, interesting.
For clarifications for the board, staff would tend to agree with the applicant's position on this. If you look at section 240-10-2, subsection B, site plan review and approval should not be required for detached single-family dwellings, accessory apartments, two-family dwellings, home occupations, and their accessory buildings, driveways, parking area structures, or associated with agricultural, farmlands, or storage, repair, and fishing equipment. So because this is a single-family development that's taking place, the site plan eligibility requirements are exempt from the site plan review criteria because you already have you have a subdivision review process already in place. And that's what takes precedence on a subdivision review.
So you're saying that review of the driveways and the glare of the lights would come under the code enforcement office when they give a permit?
Depending on how many lots are being associated with that, yes, you're correct, and the length of it.
All right.
So
But-
just to be clear here, I think we've got a fundamental misunderstanding. The subdivision regulations are not a town-approved document.
They are town approved.
I'm sorry, they're not voted on by the town.
They are now.
They are?
Yes, once they became codified, they are now required to be approved by the voters for any new changes moving forward.
I know that we can, for example, give waivers against sections of the subdivision regulations, but not for the land use ordinance. Right? The land use ordinance is the governing document. The subdivision regs are more specific details. I don't think that because this is subdivision that the land use ordinance isn't applicable.
I agree.
Okay.
The land use ordinance is applicable, but not site plan review criteria.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that I'm asking for a performance standard basically on the individual sites, more or less as I understand it. And that really comes under code office purview. But the subdivision regulations, if you go to the general, I'm sorry, I have to go way. Authority of administration, purposes, and so forth. It's to clarify subdivision law and review of proposed subdivisions. To ensure that the new development in the town of Kennebunkport meets the goals and conforms to the policies of Kennebunk Comprehensive Plan and subsequent amendments or revisions of the state's main growth management act goals and so forth. All right. Then 1.4, to ensure comfort, convenience, safety, health, and welfare of the people of the town of Kennebunkport. That's a general purpose. to protect the environment and conserve the natural and cultural resources identified in the Kennebunkport Comprehensive Plan and subsequent amendments or revisions which are important to the community. Okay? To ensure that minimal levels of services and facilities are available to the residents of new subdivisions and that lots and subdivisions are capable of supporting proposed uses and structures. And then to minimize the potential impacts from new subdivisions on neighboring properties and on the municipality, to promote the development of an economically sound and stable community. I think 1.7 right there says that we can look at the whole subdivision and how it affects the abutting properties in general. And if we have driveways that point towards already existing abutting houses, I think that we can ask for a change in terms of the site plan itself overall.
This isn't a site plan, this is a
Well,
subdivision.
Subdivision
Review.
plan.
Subdivision plan.
Subdivision plan. Okay? I think you could ask for the driveways to be changed. We're not asking for that. We're not asking for a wall to be built out of gold bricks. We're asking for fencing, which is not that expensive, despite the fact that wood has gone up, to protect abutting properties from driveway glare, from the glare of the headlights, halogen lights we have today, which are very, very bright.
Nina, you're calling this a driveway, but it is the subdivision road that we're talking about.
No,
correct?
it's the driveways too. It's going to be the driveways too because of the angle of the
right.
lots. So that's the only way they can.
I thought it was
put
the
in a
road that
driveway.
we're approving,
It's
Is what
really
we're-
the road versus.
is what we're talking about.
Well-
Where the house is, it's really the road that's gonna impact the house, not the driveways.
Both will.
Well, the driveways
The
aren't yet
driveway is
shown.
probably more.
There's only one place the driveways can be put in.
Right.
From basically the lots that are shown on the plan.
Right,
And it's very clear what will happen when somebody drives out of that lot.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with you, only to say that by calling it a driveway and associating it with a future site plan, I think that's,
I think
that's
you're
just
right.
confusing the
I
issue.
think you're
It
right.
really is the road and its extensions onto the driveway that will support the eventual driveways that we're talking about here, and it's clear that there will be intrusion on the neighbors right now. I think playing this little legal game isn't serving us well.
I think it's just the applicant's opinion that there is no review criteria related to this. There's no performance standard related to this. So it's not a requirement.
In the
That's
past, there
only-
hasn't had to be. We've gone to this general statement, and people have largely tried to
Understood,
accommodate.
understood.
And I do want to point out that in the land use ordinance, that's section 10.11, which allows for landscape buffers and so forth on sites, okay? There is another section in there, I think it's 1.5 of the land use ordinance, that says that when there are conflicting ordinances and regulations, that the stricter will apply.
Yeah, it's our belief that it just doesn't apply at all, so there aren't conflicting ordinances. Again, that's the applicant's position on this
Okay.
item. The next one, Mr. Francis asked for a confirmation of net residential area calculation on each lot. Which was a bit confusing to me. I'm used to net residential acreage being used to calculate net residential density and maximum number of lots in a subdivision, which we've done, and it's been on the subdivision plan since day one.
Yes.
We've worked with Galen on this. Galen's put together a memo. If the board hasn't seen it, I'm happy to read it.
Yeah, there is a differential in what is in your, and I made sure I referenced it in my memo. The section 415.11.17 deals with the calculation of net residential area. Your definition, though, in the land use ordinance doesn't clarify that. And so, because this is a subdivision, I am agreeing with the applicant to use their calculation criteria for determining
Can I comment
the
on
net
this?
residential area for the entire lot.
So I think there's two things that we're confusing here. Again, it's similar to the thing we just talked about. It's the difference between the entire subdivision and the individual lots, right? So there's a statement in each of the documents. The land use ordinance says that the net residential area for a lot that's going to have a single-family home on it needs to be 40,000 square feet. Period. Okay. If we're going to argue that we're going to save that argument for when somebody wants to put a home on that lot, I'm going to have trouble basically setting those people up. In the subdivision regs, there is a statement that says the maximum number of houses you can put in a subdivision is, take the net residential area for the entire property and divide it by 40,000, and you're going to get that. And that's true, and that becomes particularly important in a cluster development situation, right? Which this isn't, right? There isn't 5 acres here, and so it's not a cluster development. We don't have the authority, and you don't have an application that tries to say, oh no, we want less than that, and we're going to preserve some extra open space. Instead, I say we revert back to looking at the 3 lots that have been proposed. Maybe one of them does have a net residential area of 40,000 square feet. I don't know, but clearly one of them doesn't at Lot 3.
I agree.
And so you're never going to be able to put a single-family home on that. Now, you might find another way to do it, but think about what would happen if we set that precedent. You say, all right, you've got a lot that's riddled with wetlands and easements, and yet there is somehow, I can put this maximum number of houses on it. But each one of those houses still has to be on a conforming lot when push comes to shove, when we go to put that in there, unless it's a cluster development and we authorize something smaller than that.
No, yeah,
I
that's
think
not,
there's a fundamental problem here with the proposal to put those 3 lots as single-family residential lots.
could you give me the reference, you mentioned the land use ordinance reference.
The land use ordinance, in the definition section, 2.2 of net residential area, that's pertinent. And then if you look at the tables for each of the different zones,
Yes.
I'd have to look it up, but you'll know what, I think you know what I'm
I do, I know
talking about.
exactly what
It's village
There's
residential.
there's two, but they're all very similar in
They
this.
are.
But village residential has, the gross area's got to be 40,000, and the net residential area on each lot for a single family has got to be 40,000.
So, I've looked, I know exactly what you're
So
talking about.
you know where I'm talking
And
about.
I find this confusing myself.
Why are there 2 columns?
Well, I agree, and the way I've been before this board several times before. We've had several subdivisions approved through this board. I believe all of them have been through the cluster section of the land use ordinance.
It's quite common because they're the larger
Exactly,
ones, and you want to do that.
This one is not, like you mentioned, we don't have 5 acres, so it's not even eligible.
Correct.
What the cluster ordinance, if you look at the cluster provision of the land use ordinance, it says the planning board has the ability to redo, or to modify 3 things, and 3 things only. Lot size, minimum lot size, setbacks, and lot width. Right?
I'm looking at 247.4, cluster development.
Okay.
Is that what we're talking? I
Yes.
see lot size.
Yep. So under that section, I don't know why it's titled lot size, but if you read that sentence after it says lot
Oh,
size,
okay, yeah.
it says, the board may modify minimum lot size.
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the planning board may reduce minimum lot sizes under this section of cluster development only if a net residential area of at least in area to the cumulative lot size reduction is maintained.
Right, no, I think
As
you skipped a
common
few
open
words though,
space.
right? Like, there's, it also talks about setbacks and,
Notwithstanding other provisions
Yep.
of this chapter relating to minimum lot size, lot width, and setback in
Yes.
single-family detached dwelling developments, the planning board, in reviewing proposed residential developments, may modify said provisions relative to minimum lot size, lot width, and setback to permit innovative approaches to housing and environmental design that provide minimum requirements for shore frontage and setback from the normal high water mark.
okay,
Shall not be-
great.
Yeah,
So
so we would have that
clearly you would
purview-
agree, no,
we
no,
would have
no,
that
that doesn't apply to this project.
Because it's not a cluster.
Exactly.
Correct.
So, would you agree with me that that section doesn't allow the board to modify the minimum net residential area per dwelling unit? Right? Doesn't say that. It says minimum lot size, setbacks, lot width. My interpretation there is that column in the table you're referencing
Yeah.
on minimum net residential area per dwelling unit is not to be applied to these individual subdivision lots. It's to be applied in calculating the total number of dwelling units allowed on a parcel, on a parcel that's to be subdivided. So again, if you,
You just don't, you don't want to apply it
I
to
don't-
any site plan review?
to any subdivision, I don't think it's
Oh,
applicable,
in a subdivision.
right? I mean.
Well, I'm contending that
if-
it
so if-
does. and
Okay,
that- and
so here's my counter
we have
argument.
discretion in a cluster situation. And in fact,
But it
I
doesn't
would
look to
argue that
me-
that's why the statement is in the subdivision regs that says, well, it says what it says there, that allows us that discretion.
Yeah, but again, I don't see how the board, so clearly every a cluster comes in, and you've got some 30,000 square foot lots, right? Because, and you've modified the minimum lot size.
Well,
But
that's
again,
why
you're
there's
not allowed to modify the minimum net residential area per dwelling unit. So is every lot smaller than,
No, I think we are allowed to reduce the minimum lot size width and setback.
minimum lot size, but not,
You can't, you can do that, and obviously you can't maintain net residential area if you do that. Obviously,
okay,
right?
I find it,
You got a half an acre lot now, it's not gonna meet the 40,000 square feet net residential area.
exactly, that would be ridiculous, right?
You can do
Which is
that
my-
in a
which is-
cluster.
Which is why.
Why
it's
would you go
my-
to the trouble of putting it in a cluster section if you couldn't do it at all?
Why didn't the authors of the ordinance allow the planning board to reduce minimum lot size, minimum net residential area per dwelling unit, lot width, and setbacks? If clearly that's something that should be, if that's a,
What is this, what is the table called? Isn't it, it doesn't say lot size, it says minimum
minimum-
lot area,
it's minimum
minimum lot,
net residential lot area.
and
per
the
dwelling
other
unit.
column is
Minimum lot
minimum lot,
size.
minimum lot area, I
Maybe
think.
lot area, yeah.
So I think in saying minimum lot size, it's covered both of those.
Okay, well-
Would, how I'd argue that. Again, I think you're not arguing before the Supreme Court here. We're talking about what was the intent and what have we done historically. We're not gonna treat every subdivision like a cluster.
I totally agree. It's my opinion that dimensional requirement is not to be applied to individual subdivision lots. It's to be applied to the overall
Okay.
parcel here.
But Mike, think.
That's my-
think-
that's my
I got-
position.
I got your position. Think about carrying that to the extreme. Why not make, Lot 3 even more heavily ridden with wetlands and easements? And you're saying as long as I got 40,000 gross, it doesn't matter what the buildable area is in there.
And that's how lots are developed all over this state.
I see. Okay.
So
I don't think that's what we've been doing here, but,
we have lot size But then you've got within, even if it's reduced, can you still put the footprint of the resident in there?
You can't,
And meeting all your setbacks and boundaries.
you can put a house in there,
And,
but
I
you
mean-
can't meet the net residential area.
But I can see the point is in determining I've got a parcel of land that's so many thousand square feet. In this case, it's gotta be at least 120,000 square feet. Divided by 3, I got 340s.
That's your gross lot
Gross-
area.
Gross lot area.
Why have the column net residential area at all?
Because that's how you determine the maximum number of lots allowed
No,
in the
no,
subdivision.
no, okay.
So we're going back and
Yeah,
forth.
okay.
I'd like to
I
move on.
think I got your position.
I think my position is, I agree with the town planner's memo to you, to staff's memo to the planning board is the same as ours. That is not applicable.
I wouldn't be able to go along with this without an input from the town lawyer. This is important.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
There's another issue on a lot that ought to be brought up at this time because it may go to the town lawyer as well.
May I just, I've got one bullet point.
Go ahead with your bullet point.
Correspondence from the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife regarding vernal pool data and assessment verifying a final determination made by the department. So again, that determination's been made by Longview Partners. It's been sent to IF&W. There's, obviously, it takes some time to come back. You know, I think Jeff, we've discussed this at length. Jeff has made a point to me to, you know, suggest that in previous projects approved, subdivisions have been approved based on the licensed scientists' reports and not based on an IF&W review, which can take months and months and months because they're just very backed up. So that's the point there. So it's in their hands. They've seen it,
And to
and
confirm,
we're waiting for it.
and to confirm, Mike, Acorn also agreed that you could approve it conditionally as part of their memo as well.
Will they be able to get a permit to build without it?
Not until
Not until it
that's
comes
taken
in.
care of. Yep.
Okay. All right.
And whether how it's classified as a vernal pool just impacts setbacks from it?
Well, I think they've already given the largest setback they
Right,
can to it if it
so-
is a significant.
So if it was to come back less, it would actually give them more room to build,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So if they're already meeting the stricter requirement with what they've submitted, then I'm not sure I understand the issue.
Yeah, it's been designed to meet the criteria as if it were a significant vernal pool.
I think the vernal pools are affecting the net residential area, to go back to the other one, and why that lot is smaller net residential area than 40,000 square feet.
Well, it's irrelevant.
Separate issue.
Right, we're off to the lawyers with that one.
Yep.
Yeah, that's irrelevant because a vernal pool, significant or not, is still a wetland.
It's still wetland.
which
Oh,
would-
that's
which-
right.
Which would be a deduction either way.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Whether it's a vernal pool or not.
Agreed.
Doesn't affect that. We're in a very late receipt of the Acorn review. I will, you know, it's lengthy, but mostly talks about what they've reviewed, and I will paraphrase that.
Well, there are some conditions in there, for
There are some
example,
suggested conditions.
for the stormwater system that you have, that you get basically official information about it, and,
From the manufacturer.
right, that's state law.
Yep.
Okay.
It's not state law. So if this were being reviewed under the Chapter 500, either stormwater permit or site law permit, those stormwater engineers would ask that. But this project is not. But it's a common practice. There's no requirement here. There's no requirement in local ordinance for that to happen. This is not under that section of state law, but it has to happen anyways because it's a proprietary system that is being sourced from a single manufacturer.
Okay, they
anyways.
did cite a
They
state.
cited chapter 500,
Yes.
which again is not, that part of chapter 500 is not applicable to
Okay.
this project.
All right,
But that's neither here nor there, that the condition is, we have no objection to that. It's something that'll happen anyways. I'm trying to find, there's a sentence in here that says, the majority of the technical issues have been addressed, with the exception of a couple things like the one Ms. Perlmutter.
Michael, they mentioned a desire, I only read this at the last minute before coming over here, but something about a shoreland zone.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that there is no shoreland zone.
There is no shoreline zone here.
I think the latest maps, the GIS site made, there may be some confusion there or something, but
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think there's
not.
any shoreland zone there.
It's not. That was something I was going to talk to Acorn about. That one would not apply, as is they said about using erosion control practices. It's my understanding that talking with Maine DEP, if we don't have that in our shoreland ordinance as a requirement, we can't make that as a requirement. So we can only
it's not
enforce what
shoreline
what we've adopted. And we know we have to update our shoreland ordinance. It needs updated.
Okay.
The project's
But
not
it's
in our
not shoreland.
I think
No
that,
shoreline.
no.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was
that-
confusing to me as well.
Yeah. I think the two things that I saw was the deficient stormwater PBR,
Yeah,
missing documentation from the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife with the vernal pool survey, which we know they said about conditional, scheduling a pre-construction meeting. And then the drainage easement, I don't think you covered that one. I did see that on sheet C too. Can you explain that? Because it looked like it was a CMP easement.
So there's a CMP easement across the site. I think we've seen that out there. That's on the plan. Well, and there's this drainage channel that runs from north to south across all three lots. So what we've done is we're showing a proposed drainage easement around that. What it does is it just allows water to flow across these lots. So these lot owners, no one has the right to dam that up or stop the flow of water through their lot. That's all that is.
And Acorn did verify the HydroCAD calculations for the water quantity and quality as well, so
Yeah.
you're in the clear.
okay.
Mike, while we're talking about stormwater, though, one of the things that came up was that the HOA recommended or said that it was going to do a once-yearly inspection, and yet the manufacturer's practices suggested that twice a year was required. What did you decide on that?
We can update that to match the manufacturer's recommended interval. And finally, I do have the list of questions from the public that Mr. Francis handed out. I have some essentially brief responses to those, so
That's all right. A lot of that was redundant, and we have dealt with it.
I think so too. So I can quickly go through them just for the record. No?
I wanted to ask the board what they wanted to do, because there were a number of them that, at least I put on the spreadsheet, I thought the board ought to comment on too. There are probably half of the comments that the public wrote in their 5 letters that I asked the applicant to make sure we understood their position on them, and the other half,
I
the
think,
board was gonna.
I think there's a procedure we need to follow here. One, as you pointed out, the letters need to go to the applicant as soon as we get them, so that they are aware of the questions from the public.
Yep.
But as far as that's concerned, I don't think the applicant should be the first to address that, because I think it's up to the board to sift through those letters and find what is relevant and what's within our jurisdiction
Agreed.
before we go back to the applicant and ask them questions about what the public is querying. a lot of the material that's in the letters that we get, not just for this application, but that people are concerned about. For example, blasting, I think we can dispense with very quickly because we have basically regulations, ordinances that deal with blasting, and they're based on state statutes. And the developer or the construction person has to follow those procedures very carefully. And that usually means before blasting, one, you're going to get notice. Two, they're going to come to your house and check out your house beforehand, and then they're going to blast, and then they're going to come back and recheck your house, and so forth and so on. So those statutes are very specific in the state, and they're being followed in our ordinances as well. So that's something I think the applicant doesn't have to address.
I don't disagree. In fact, let me just be clearer than that. I do agree with that. What I don't want to happen is that the letters aren't dealt with by the board, that they come in, we get them or we don't get them, and we don't necessarily address what the concerns are. I think someone took the trouble to write a clear letter, and I will say that in this case, the 5 letters that came in on the preliminary were quite clear. I didn't agree with every statement in there, but I thought it deserved a review and a response, at least verbally.
They do, but I think the board needs to go through them first. And I think, one, like you pointed out, the applicant needs to get them at the same time.
Yes.
So that they know what's going on and what questions we might ask.
So I think that the procedure has been
It's
updated,
being straightened out.
right? And they will get them in the future, but right now, I put together a spreadsheet that said, here's the 5 that we got in the preliminary, and I marked the statements, a summary of the statements that said the board ought to consider this one. You gave a good one on blasting, and I think we would all agree that on the blasting one, our position is going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, that, yes, the contractor, the developer will be required to follow the town of Kennebunkport ordinance with respect to blasting, and that will go through the process that's been used on all of the recent subdivisions we've been a part of. And,
Well, I think the board pretty much does do that. They read every letter. And they bring up.
that's where I had a problem and went to the trouble of doing this, because I thought we weren't reading all the letters. I wasn't getting all of them. It took a lot of, if you go look at the new database site, you won't find all 5 letters that we got in the preliminary. You'll find 4 of them, unless that's been corrected.
It's probably being corrected. We're still putting things onto that database.
I agree. I'm just saying, I think this is an important subdivision. It's got a lot of attention. It just deserved a little extra care to make sure that we looked at all the letters, and that's all I was trying to do. If we want to say we've all looked at them and we want to talk about it anymore, then the board can vote on that. But I just thought it would be easy to go through the 5 letters.
No, it doesn't need a vote. I think people are aware of the letters, and they've read the letters like we do on the board, and we do for every application, not just, site plans, subdivision regs, and so forth. There are things in there that people bring up that aren't within our jurisdiction, like somebody said something about a sewer smell or something like that. We can't go looking for sewer smells or what causes that, all right? Our jurisdiction is to look at the application and not, whether it will affect the sewer smell or anything like that.
So
But when it's a subdivision is being connected to the sewer,
Well, then
there is some sort of correspondence that's going on with the sewer district that they
Right.
can handle it.
That's right,
So there's a process there. It's not that there's nothing, it's just not our process.
right.
And if it couldn't handle the additional volume or whatever, then they wouldn't get approval to connect.
That's right.
Yeah,
That
but
we
it-
depend on those departments
Right.
to
And
advise
just like
us.
we depend on the code office to do things. So that, like you said, falls outside of our preview. It's
Well-
in another.
That letter's in that item 6 of your final application. So they have the ability for water, sewer hookup is all,
Yeah,
you get letters to,
right,
Confirm.
yeah, that,
Yep.
from the sewer board or whatever saying, yep, we've looked at it, game on.
yep.
Well, I would have gone one further. We talked about that letter. I would ask the person that wrote the letter, all right, you've been smelling a sewer smell, has it been reported to our sewer department? They're pretty good team there.
Yeah.
And if that's been done already, I think that's gonna take care of it.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to leave it
Yeah, and,
unnoticed.
yeah. And I think the other thing is there's terms that people use that in an ordinance or in a statute have very specific meaning, like a pond of significance. That's a very detailed what that means, and not just, well, it's a significant pond because it's big and there's a lot of wildlife there. So there's kind of like, you know, capital significance and lowercase significance. Capital is it's a determined, defined piece, and so it was mixed up some of the language in some of the letters that way, where they were using terms that weren't necessarily the defined terms to describe things. But again, it's somebody's,
So let me make a suggestion here. I'm not anxious to go through these letters line by line either. It wasn't fun to put together this spreadsheet, but you have it.
yeah,
I would like to ask if the board has gone through these letters and these items and thinks there's nothing more to be brought up in the public hearing, I'm satisfied with that. I would also observe that the note that I see that came in today from the applicant basically says, in every case where I asked the applicant to comment, the applicant has come back and said, we've already given you everything on this. We have nothing more to say. So that's okay. But if you go back through this summary and make sure there's nothing in there that gives you pause, then I'm fine, and I've done what I can to make sure that we've taken the abutters seriously in this case.
I think we always take the abutters seriously.
If we don't miss something,
yeah,
yes, we do.
and I understand what Ed's saying because of the volume here and for the system not getting us everything.
Yeah.
And as I've gone through them, I've read them all, made notes on them all, but I've done all the ones that I have copies of.
Yeah.
And part of an itch is, well, do I have them all?
And
That's what I was worried
That's a
about.
different question, is do we get them all?
No, that is the question. That's what prompted me to go spend a couple of hours to put this all
You
together.
do get every letter and email, and I will defend staff on that. Whether it goes into your spam folder, you got all the emails and letters from the planning staff that were received.
Galen, please, I'm not casting blame here or assigning fault or
It
even
is
saying.
implied, Ed, it is.
I'm
And I'm going to defend my staff because they work diligently at the
Consider
service of the town.
consider them defended. All I'm saying is you didn't need, that wasn't my implication. If the process allows things to go to my spam folder, then the process needs an adjustment.
And we are adjusting it, I think, for you, Ed.
I think we are. All I want is, in this case, to make sure that we didn't drop the ball. Because this is the case where we caught the fact that the process had a few niggles in it and that are being corrected.
Okay, well, I think this is addressed, and I think we have addressed the abutters letters, the issues in them. I'll address a couple more, probably.
Well, I think some of them you raised earlier are line items in here. So the road would shine directly on a butter's back windows.
Yes.
That hasn't gone away.
No, it hasn't gone
So,
away.
so as long as anything significant has been grabbed out of this, then
Okay,
I got what I needed out of this.
all right. I'd like to ask a couple of questions here.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. When I asked you about site distances and putting them on the sketch plan and so forth, you said you had an entrance permit and that should take care of it, meaning that the traffic person had gone out and looked for the site distances, which they do, I understand that. But when I went back to the entrance permit, it said that you needed to clear brush and they expected a culvert to be put under the edge of the road there. And I don't see anything on your plans that shows that you've done that you're going to do that.
Okay, that we can certainly address that
I think
as a
that,
condition of approval if,
yeah, I think that was a
Sure.
requirement for the
Understood.
entrance permit, and it needs to be done. Okay.
agreed.
Okay, if I could go back to a couple of things. I want to point out that as far as a wetland of significance, whatever it was, and so forth, I think that issue has been addressed. I think the fact that the DEP, even though they let it be silent, didn't bring it up. You know, I've seen no evidence come in. It doesn't matter whether it's man-made or not. I've seen no evidence come in to show that it is a wetland of significance. All right, so basically, we can call it a pond. All right, it meets the definition of a pond. I will go along with the DEP. They've had 2 people out to look at the supposed drainage ditch stream out there and determined by standards of the DEP, it is not a stream, okay? And I want to point out that the board usually goes along with the DEP on what they say in terms of setbacks. Doesn't mean we can't make more stringent setbacks, but we usually don't, okay? I just want to make that clear. We still have a determination to be made on the vernal pool into whether it's a significant vernal pool or not. But because you've already got the setbacks on there in case it is, I'm not worried about that. So I'm no longer worried about the water course or anything like that. However.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I just speak to that for a moment?
Sure.
So, just to speak to that, I guess briefly, the wetland specialist, licensed wetland specialist has made a determination that it is not a significant vernal pool or a, sorry, what's the term, Jim? Yeah. They went out, checked the egg masses, which is the standard process, did it over a course of days as required. So that,
Okay.
not unlike any other project that I've ever put before this board. I mean, that's always been the determining factor.
Okay.
And it's gone to the DEP, they received it, we just
So
haven't
the
heard from
process
them.
is that it gets sent off, it gets cataloged, and that's it.
So it's gone to IFW, in other
That's
words,
correct.
and you're just waiting for the permit.
Can I make a quick point to the board?
Very quick.
When we make these vernal pool determinations and send them to the DEP and the IFW, we're not waiting for a response back from them. It's a registration of information.
understand.
The form itself says, for registration of this information, it is a registration form. We send it in, they add it to a map, and then they send a notice back that it was added to a map. That's
got it.
all that we get. There's no confirmation we get from anybody.
Thank you.
It's a requirement to get it onto the map. It's a registration.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let me just, I want to ask, Jeff, you just, why is it important to you? Because Nia said, and I think the board agreed, your plan doesn't change whether or not it's a significant vernal pool. You've already taken it into account. Are you considering changing the plan?
No, I guess my point, Ed, is, with all due respect, the Madam Chair made the comment that it was not determined if it was
And
a
it has
significant
been.
vernal pool or not,
And it has been.
and it has been by a licensed specialist.
I let myself off the hook when I saw that your plan, I didn't want to quibble about
Right, well,
that,
that's,
so,
yeah.
which is
and like
even,
Mike
even
mentioned
easier.
earlier,
You made it easy.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so let me go on. According to the subregs, 17.2D16, you need an approximate location and site of all proposed building envelopes, including dwellings, driveways, and lawns and gardens. I'm assuming you've taken that as just showing the blocked-out area. You haven't shown any dwellings or proposed dwellings.
Yeah, these lots are to be sold to others who will design houses, and so, yeah, we don't have any
Right,
proposed, and
okay, well,
frankly, I don't think we've done that on any
okay.
previous
Well,
projects.
let me go on from there. The pond, clearly, from Acorn's determination and also Jim's determination is over 10,000 square feet. In the subregs performance standards, 11.18, okay? Land within 250 feet of a high water mark. I want to read you that section. When a proposed subdivision is situated in whole or in part within 250 feet of a normal high water mark of any pond in excess of 10,000 square feet in area, lake, river, or tidal waters, no part of any subsurface waste disposal systems, no roads except for crossings and property access, and no dwellings shall be installed or constructed within 250 feet of the normal high water mark. The board may use such lands in lot area calculation if lands are not excluded by other provisions of these regulations or provision of Chapter 240 land use. This section is intended to be stricter than Chapter 240 land use and carries forward provisions in existence since 1972. In other words, there's stricter setbacks from water bodies for subdivisions. I used your calculation on your plan from the pond on Lot 1, and I cannot see how you could put any dwelling on that area. You're within the 250 feet setback.
Yeah, this is just coming up, and so
I
I'm not
think you need
prepared
to go back and look
yeah.
for that, because I've taken my ruler for 240 feet from the pond, from where you have it on your property, from where it is on other property, and it covers Lot 1, that buildable area.
Okay. You know, we'll have to review that. I don't, this is kind of new information to me, but can you give me that reference one more time?
Yes, it's 415-11.18, land within 250 feet of a high water mark.
Thank you.
That includes the road, yes? You said roads?
Includes any land.
Anything,
Yep.
anything.
But didn't you say road unless it was used for access or something like that?
Well,
Yeah, no roads,
installed. Yeah, no roads,
except for the crossing for property access.
right. So that would be property access. But it also says no
Building,
dwellings.
yeah, sure, understood.
That's
Yeah,
what
we'll
I'm
have to review it.
concerned with.
Yep.
Okay. That's basically what I have.
Thank you.
Okay. If you don't have any more for describing, I'll open to the rest of the planning board for questions.
Can I make a couple comments? In reference to that, I mean, obviously, that's a stunner, right? I'm surprised we're standing here at final application.
Well, you caused me to go through the subdivision regulations word by word this time.
Why was that?
Because I was concerned over some of the things you said where I had no authority to ask for certain things. And so
Understood.
I was comparing it to land use ordinance, and as we were going through procedures anyway, for the planning board, the subdivision regulations were right there, and I started down them.
I wish we'd done that at preliminary,
I wish we had to.
yeah. And it was 10,000 square feet?
10,000 square feet.
So when Jim went out and did his calculation on the pond, what he did was he had to, I mean, you have to do it, right? You have to use a canoe. They went in, they pitched in a canoe, and they went along the shoreline and made marks. And some of you, I guess, probably haven't seen that map yet, apparently. So we would need to, I guess catalog open water is, see what the calculation is.
Yes. Well, that's one of the reasons I asked you for a diagram of that pond, you know, way back, as I was curious about it and where it was and where the edges were.
Yeah.
But remember that Acorn calculated it as much larger too.
Well, Acorn calculated it as at 36,000 square feet.
That's right.
So I'll just make a quick point here. I pay Acorn through an escrow account we put money into.
Yeah.
So now I've paid Mr. Logan here to determine that the other people that I paid over here were incorrect.
Yeah.
So, I guess I have to, we'll have to make a determination on the size of the open water in that
Well,
pond.
you have. You said it was 11,600 square feet today.
I thought the board didn't receive that.
Or 700. No, it was red. Mike
Oh,
just read it to
Mike
us.
read it.
11,000.
Was it
We-
seven?
I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't
but I
seen it,
just-
Ed?
I wrote it down.
Emergent veg, 24,
Yeah,
Right.
for a total of
So,
14,000.
but again, when we did that calculation, we did it very conservatively.
Good.
We ran the canoe, the bow of the canoe up to shore, and took points along each of the shore points. So, and you can see that
Yep.
on the map. So if we're 11,000 square feet, I want to confirm that that's indeed the case.
Okay,
Is that fair?
that's fair.
fair.
Yeah, plus the emergent vegetation, which was estimated at 2,400.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
So is the 10,000, Nina, that you quoted, is that open water? Or
think so.
open water?
Pond.
Or emergent?
Pond.
Or pond?
What's the definition of a pond?
Pond, yeah, and that's.
That would be in the
question
land
I
use
had.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
wasn't
Ordinance, right?
sure.
Maybe.
I can get you that.
It says the normal high water mark. It doesn't define the edges of a pond.
And emergent vegetation would be within that high water mark.
Yeah,
So your
Wetland vegetation.
your definition for pond actually comes from the shoreland zoning,
State.
which we combine into our land use ordinance. And so the definition for pond is an inland impoundment of water, natural or man-made, which collects and stores surface water. That's,
And this pond would be impounded?
I think that's just means it's
impounded.
contained, yeah.
Okay, well, there's a drainage channel, just thought
Yeah.
I'd mention that. I had one other point I guess I wanted to make. Yeah, no, I guess that's it.
the only thing I can
I'd like
think
to know
of,
what the genesis
if
is of
that
that.
holds true, is to take your lot 1 and 2 and make them long lots.
And this is a performance standard?
it is.
Yes,
Okay,
And waivers can be requested
okay.
if there's no other reasonable
that's why I
alternative.
said we may need another legal opinion.
Yeah.
What would you
Can-
like the opinion regarding, just if it's a pond or what?
No.
Definition of a pond and how it's measured. How you
You're just
measure
gonna
that.
spend money doing that.
I don't know, attorneys aren't really,
It's gonna be Jeff's money.
that's why they hired an environmental scientist to handle.
That's,
Yeah.
I think you need to send a drone up.
So, just so, somebody on there, just so I understand this, because I've never bumped into this before. If somebody were to dig a pond on the edge of their property that was 10,000 square feet, they would prevent somebody abutting them from
That's-
developing their property
That is what this
up to
says.
250 feet?
And that question has come up. I know Galen and I talked about it. But when you read this, clearly, yes.
Okay,
I'm not sure if there is anything, Jeff, in the state law, like, I know they did it for vernal pools, that's not part of the calculation if it's not on your property, and for splight wells, that's another one that they don't calculate it. I don't know
Right.
about state law, but that's,
okay.
yeah.
Be worth knowing where that came from. How did it get in our subdivision regs, right? Usually things are there for a reason. Does it
It's
derive from
intended-
some definition of Great Pond, or it's tied to
It's
something?
clearly intended to be very strict, emphasizing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Got me.
Others?
Well, okay, so I had a couple of questions. So I actually tried to decipher the stormwater management, and so I looked at your maps, and it's too much for me, I'm relying on Acorn for that. But then I also wanted to determine if, I wanted to see if I could figure out net residential area, and the lots are such an irregular shape I didn't have the planimeter that I needed for that. So I'm also gonna rely on somebody else, I guess Acorn. But that led me to the table of dimensional requirements for, from the land use ordinance for the village residential. This is in the village residential zone, right?
That's the
So-
table we were talking about.
Yep, so the minimum lot area is 40,000, and the minimum net residential area per dwelling unit is 40,000 square feet. So then, I tried to figure out what is deducted from gross to get net, obviously the wetland, which is why lot 3 is in question. But then it seemed like there were some other deductions like driveways or,
So there, yeah, which is one other reason it doesn't make sense to me. You take 15% right off the top.
Yeah.
So you,
Yeah,
so if minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet and, or, I'm sorry, minimum net residential area per dwelling unit is 40,000 square feet, you've got to start with 15% more than that right off the bat.
well,
Again,
that,
it doesn't make sense
that
to
was
apply
kinda
that
my-
to individual lots.
that was kind of the conclusion I came to, that,
Clearly, a road
yeah.
is talking about an entire parcel.
Well, anyway, so then I got stuck on minimum net residential area because it seemed like there was a bunch of things that needed to be deducted from each of the 3 lots, really. When you consider not only wetlands, but areas devoted to drainage and/or driveways.
So I think that's Mr. Francis's
Okay, so
point.
that seems to me to be, you know, a valid point. Then I said, okay, well, the simple thing to do is I can just measure the minimum lot width. Well, I tried to do that too, and again, the lots are somewhat irregular. Galen helped me on this. But could you, on your drawing, could you show where, you actually put some dimensions on there so we can.
Sure.
So we can see where the minimum lot width.
I can. So it's measured
how
at
it-
the setback. It's,
Well, I know that's what it says, measured at the setback, but then, I mean, the shapes are so irregular, I couldn't do it, okay?
I could certainly do
So
that. yeah.
that would really be a big help, if you could put some dimensions on there, thank you. So basically, I got stuck all the way around on, trying to figure this out. Anyway, if you could help us out, particularly on the minimum, residential area and the minimum lot issues.
So, I think right off the bat, and again, I don't want to belabor this. Clearly, if that net residential area calculation is to take, it applies to each of these lots, none of these lots have 40,000, right? Because they're very close to 40,000, and then they can
Then they
contain
got some
deductions.
exclusions.
Well, and to be honest, I actually came to that conclusion myself.
Yeah,
I said,
it's easy to see.
so it's almost like, you're looking at a 2-lot subdivision instead of 3.
Well, again, it's your plan, it's your staff's opinion that's not how that is applied, and I agree with that.
So in the past, when we just have a lot that comes to us and says, we want a building permit for a single-family dwelling, we take the net residential area of that area that's being developed, that one. And so you'll see in the calculations, we deduct the driveway or the private road from those calculations. But you're correct, in a subdivision, it's a little bit different because the road is, owned by the association, it's privately owned collectively. And your definition and your calculation for net residential area is also different than what your definition section of the land use ordinance is. So how we normally apply this is on a parcel by parcel basis, when it comes to a single family home. But if it's a subdivision, it clearly is indicating on here that, your definition of your net residential area, is including collectively the entire lot that's being split. And I understand the rationale for why they did that, because you're planning, a larger residential area versus just a single lot that's being
So
developed.
following that argument, whenever somebody comes in to apply for a building permit for a house, you're going to deny it because it won't meet the land use ordinance. Is that where this is going?
It has to meet the net residential area for that lot.
Yeah,
But you're saying if we approve the subdivision.
yeah, but then you still have to approve each lot, and that's where it's gonna get stuck. That's what I'm saying. The lots seem to me to be too small to satisfy the LUO.
I agree.
So you might approve the whole subdivision, but then then nothing will ever be built there because.
Well,
no
but then
lot
they'll
was-
come in and they'll say, but the planning board said it was okay, they approved the
Yeah. Right.
subdivision.
See where I'm stuck on?
No,
I also got stuck.
I agree.
Okay,
I think
so-
it's wrong.
I believe there's a section of your ordinance that pertains to lots that have been approved by the planning board as buildable. So that provision, I believe, does carry over and take care of that conundrum that you're in.
But if that were the case, Galen, it wouldn't matter how much wetlands were on this as long as there was enough footprint to put a house on it.
That's
Because
not true.
there's nothing that would constrain it from having a minuscule net residential area.
They
Well,
met
the
with-
net residential area calculation for the entire thing takes.
No,
that
no,
into
but
account.
one of those lots, we decided to be the sacrificial lot, and it's got tons of wetlands in it, and it's only got a postage stamp. Oh, the planning board approved it. No, we don't want to do that,
But it met your lot size requirements. They are over 40,000 square feet.
but not of buildable area, not of net
Not-
residential area.
Yeah.
Does it?
That's the
but I
problem.
think
That's
It
the
was for the
dilemma.
plan. That's, yeah.
It's not in
there's
the
a
plan.
difference between net residential and buildable. Those are two different things, right?
No, well,
So your lot size and your net residential area are two different things.
Yeah.
right, the gross area and the net area are different.
So the net is reducing all the wetlands, 15% of your roads, anything that's in the floodplain.
Things where you clearly can't build.
Right.
Now, maybe you don't build on everything that isn't clearly excluded, Mike, to your point, but the net is to exclude the things that are easements, wetlands, roads, things you can't put a house on or near. The rest of it is the net residential area.
Yeah.
And you gotta have 40,000 square feet
That's
for
what
a
this
lot.
says. That's what this says in the
Yeah,
LUO.
yeah, unless we wanna change the LUO. Oh, I can't do that, but,
No, yeah.
you know, somebody can. You can go for a waiver on that.
No, the town has to.
So,
There's another board that deals with waiver requests to the LUO.
right.
It's not us.
Appeals, right, yeah. So, that's all my questions, but if you could really help us out on this, you know, make it simple. You know, try to satisfy the LUO attachment 1. That'd be great.
Understood.
All right, thank you.
You guys got all the fun questions.
Yeah.
I've just got this one thing, and I don't understand it. It's in the Acorn report that we got, which you did not write. And I don't know if it's a cut and paste job, but it's under item 6. It says, the application states that the proposed project is located within the Batson River frontal Gooseberry Bay watershed. And I couldn't find it in the HOA or the application anywhere, and it's definitely not in the Batson River Goose Bay
I
watershed.
think
I don't know
that
where
goes
that comes
back to the
It's not?
shoreland thing.
Yeah, it's a cut and paste.
I just want to confirm that I was missing it. Good, thanks.
I thought, well, what watershed is it in? I mean, not that it's critically important, but I thought that rain that falls there ends up in the Batson River.
I think it's called Rocky Pasture.
And then what? How does it get to the Atlantic Ocean?
Flows down near Walker's Point into that.
So it doesn't go down to the Batson River, it goes,
Nowhere near it.
okay.
You got Cape Porpoise in between.
Yeah, good point.
It goes into the pond then.
It goes into the pond, it goes to the wildlife sanctuary.
I do have one more thing.
Mike?
Mike?
No, all my things have been covered. I just went back through everything, so I think I'm good.
I had one more thing, just, it doesn't supersede any of the other things that we've talked about, but if we get to the point of approving this, and we talk about how we're gonna do the reporting, the biannual checking of the stormwater system, I have to say that in our experience on the board, this is an elaborate system, and it is pushing us to be considering how the records are kept with this, and how people get access to the records and all of that. I do think that the constraint of having to do it either biannually or annually, however that is, needs to be captured either in a deed or in the findings of fact, and not left to just in an HOA agreement that might be changed in the future. So I think that'll be just something that we'll say. And but also, I think a copy should go to the town to be filed with the records. So that
Is that
if
a-
somebody decided they wanted to go look at it, they wouldn't have to, they would know where to go look.
Yeah, is,
That's all.
is that a,
It's a new thing we're inventing.
okay,
That's my proposal.
oh, okay, yeah, I mean, again, I think
I don't
this
think that would be a
applicant
big
would,
burden.
I think this applicant would ask that this project be held to the same standards as others, but
Well,
if there is a
I
system in
think-
place and that's the
I think you're
town's.
breaking ground here, I think. with
I
this.
believe during the building permit application process, they have to prove some sort of ownership to move forward with that application. So we can certainly catch it at that level.
No, I'm saying 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road,
Which
which is-
office
which
would
is-
it be sent to?
the code enforcement
Code
office,
enforcement.
to go into a file.
file.
It's kept, same as we do on the reporting for the wells, so that hidden earth, is that what it's called?
Hidden pond.
Hidden pond.
Understood.
It's just in the file,
Yeah, if the board chooses to make that a condition, then.
yeah,
Well,
my thought.
Galen and I have talked about that. Eventually, some of these things don't need to go into HOA so much as they need to go into deeds.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Oh, okay, well, if there are no more questions from the board, I'm going to open up the public hearing. And if there's anybody out here who hasn't touched any of these subjects, who wants to speak on these subjects or who wants to bring up a new subject, go ahead. Please state your name and your address.
Excuse me.
Hi, Catherine Gay. My property abuts this proposed development. My comments are really in discussion of a letter that I sent to the board dated June 17th, and mostly talking about the pond, wetlands, and vernal pools, and how that would be affected by the subdivision. My letter included documents showing that the pond and these wetland areas have been in existence for close to 100 years, likely more. A lot of it was talking about man-made, but I know that now is not in contention or not an important issue. So I won't talk about that. The majority of the adjacent lot and part of the proposed lot comprises the pond, the wetlands, and surrounding that area, I'm assuming vernal pools, which is a piece that I think in my letter hasn't been addressed. And I'm assuming because there are wood frogs that breed there every spring in that whole area around the pond, that would make vernal pool, potential vernal pools.
Well, a vernal pool is something that goes dry in the summer.
So I'm talking about the edge, so there's the pond, the wetlands, and then that area surrounding. And I know I sent audio in, I don't know if it got through, someone younger than me helped me set up Google something, and.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, and these are from.
I'm
you know,
not sure those are wood frogs, though.
Well, well, according to my research, they are, if they're the first ones that come out in the spring. Jim, you can probably
Yeah.
help. Yeah,
Peepers, yeah.
they're from the research I did, they're the first frogs that start in the spring, and they have a duck-like call. They're very distinctive type of a call. And they are the first ones that come out, and they go on for maybe 6, 7, 8 days, then the other frogs start. And I'm sure that can be, I don't know if you've looked at the tapes, but to the audio. Okay, all right. Well, we have questions. A lot of these questions, clearly I'm not a wildlife scientist, but it's clear that to me, that there are wood frogs surrounding that area. And so my feeling is that these need to be studied. The proposed road is adjacent to these areas. Lot 1 is adjacent. Lot 2 and 3, I think, are within that 250-foot setback for habitat for a significant vernal pool. And asking that these have been studied is, I think that's an important piece. I think all potential vernal pools that are, may be affected by this development should be studied for significance. And I'm sure all these can be checked. And I know that they did study one vernal pool and found 0 wood frog egg masses. And again, I'm not a scientist, but I do have audio of the wood frogs breeding in that pool. My research says that every female wood frog lays thousands of eggs every spring. And so it seems odd to me that there would be 0 egg masses found, you know, with 3 visits. So those are my questions. Basically, those vernal pools and whether they could all be studied. I did come across in the past that the town has tried to protect that area. In 2001, they issued a permit to a previous owner for a 12 to 15-foot driveway, and they stipulated that they needed to avoid the pond and wetlands. That was in 2001. I have a copy of that, if that's would be helpful. And that was even before the state protected significant vernal pools, which I think was in 2007 with the Natural Resource Protection Act. So I guess my concern is that that area surrounding that pond, that abuts the road and the lots, that they be studied for potential vernal pools of significance.
Are you saying there are separate pools there, or is this part of the edge of the pond, which, you know, goes dry during certain parts of the season?
The outlet from the pond is abutting my property. So that whole area, well, if you look at the adjacent property and the wetland areas that are listed, these wood frogs are all around surrounding that, on that lot.
The way I saw that, that's the, call it the main 1,100 square foot pond. And that's not a definition of a vernal pool. That's separate, am I correct? Yeah.
Correct.
So the only vernal pool is the one at the back of the property, kind of downslope where I don't want to say creek, stream, because it's not the seasonal drainage goes down to it. That's the only.
No, I know what you mean.
Vernal pool per the defined regs.
Right, well, the question, I think, is, you know, these are wetlands, and are there pools, are there additional pools in there? And I would ask Jim to address that, because he's probably gone over the whole property. Because, you know, it can be a section of the pond which floods and then dries back down.
Right.
It's a vernal pool because it dries during the summer and there are no fish in it. The fish would eat the frog eggs, for example, you know, so that's the definition of a vernal pool. And also the vegetation there are certain layers of vegetation in a vernal pool. I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know when I first started addressing some of my concerns with the amount of wildlife and aquatic life that we have in that lot, I didn't know. I hadn't done a lot of reading. I did speak with someone at the Inland Fishery and Wildlife and talked about what I hear out there, and she's the one that told me that in and around ponds there are vernal pools that surround the areas in and around a pond. Yeah.
Okay, well, it has to be a significant vernal pool to
Right.
actually have a setback.
Exactly. Yes, I do know the difference
Okay.
of that.
So,
Yes.
so, can I just say, I take your point that all of that 4 acres needs to be studied, the wetlands on it. And it's clear that there's a pond and some pools and some vernal pools and potentially a significant vernal pool. And even if you don't have to study it anymore, the plans that have been put forward right now say, all right, we're gonna live with the state-regulated setbacks from those pools. Even if they're not vernal, significant, we're staying back from them. But you're still saying we should study them some more, and as a board, with, restricted by what we can do by the ordinance, I'm not sure that wouldn't just be a delaying tactic, right?
And I'm not talking about the pool that was studied on the back lot.
Well,
I'm talking about the area around surrounding the wetlands of the pond.
But I think it has been studied. It hasn't been studied perhaps and egg masses gathered, but it's been studied to see, and Jim's gonna, I know at some point, correct me on this, but it's been studied to the point of saying, does it make sense to gather egg masses?
Does it make sense to study it?
Further, right.
Okay.
In other words, it's had a level of study.
Okay,
I
haven't
don't
seen
think
that.
any of that area has been ignored. That's my take on all of the information that I've been able to digest. But that it's been looked at in a very systematic, regulated way. I might, not as a scientist that's in this trade, say, well, I think this is crazy, the way we take 3 days and we go measure the egg sacs, and we know this varies year to year, and we don't have to do it over multiple years, and maybe we should do 5 days, and maybe we should do 8 days. And that's not what our possibly flawed process, what our state regulations cause us to do and to live with. I have a soft spot for the environment. I think it's easy to see. I'm a soft-hearted liberal. But we have legislation that's been agreed to, and it is a compromise set of legislation. And right now, I believe that process has been followed. There's evidence that's been presented to me that says that process has been followed, and I'm hard-pressed to say we should study it more.
I would agree.
And
Sorry.
I missed something that those areas had been looked at.
Yeah,
I haven't seen
IFW
that.
has been out there and, looking at wildlife. And they would make note of it.
Okay.
Well, I dare
It
say,
seemed to
and
me
I'll-
that they
I'll-
were focusing on the 4 acres of the proposed lot. as
I think
opposed
we
to
have
adjacent
focused
lot.
on that, but I think at the start, and I think Jeff has made the point to refer to Mr. Logan as a licensed person of this trade. He's walked every inch of that property and gathered data on it and decided, which parts of it were suspect and had to be studied further, and he's done that, and he's provided the evidence. And he's fed it into to the state machinery.
And he's had people from the state there with him on more than one occasion.
Yes.
Looking
Yep.
at the site too, so it's just not Jim's eyes, it's Jim and representatives of the state going and looking at that, identifying which areas needed to be studied more. So it's not just that we focused on the one back one, that site has been walked over extensively.
I think so, and it is heavily wetland intensive, and there's some issues that we're pointing to in the land use ordinance and in the subdivision regs that we think put some restrictions on the size of the lots, et cetera. But in terms of gathering more egg masses and protecting the creatures that do depend on those vernal pools, I think you've got a plan that at least follows the state-regulated, state-determined setbacks from those ponds. Whether that's a compromise or not, I mean, it seems to be, in terms of leaving it as it was when the native peoples walked this land. I know it's
Well, I
not
think
that good.
the part that's concerning to me is the 50-foot road would cover, part of that road would cover some of those wetlands I'm talking about, where there are breeding wood frogs, and would cover part of that pond.
Yeah, and appears as though it is clear that the regulations allow that.
There's a certain percentage that the regs allow you to disturb or cover when you're putting in things like roads and that, and they're actually slightly under that number. A number of 1587 comes to mind as the requirement, and they're at 1520 or something, so.
That
they're
was
slightly-
the Army Corps of Engineers coverage, and most of that was road
Road coming
and
out.
some other little wetlands.
Yeah, so there is allowance for some of that in the regulation to be impacted, and they're under the maximum that they can do.
And does that include vernal pools?
No.
No.
I don't believe any vernal pools are in that area
Not-
that's
no,
gonna
it
be.
was just- It was just wetlands. And the one vernal pool is in the back, and then this kind of new quasi thing that I've never heard of before, where it's a pond, edge of a pond. When a pond dries up, I get vernal pools. We're not impacting the pond, changing the pond size with the road that goes in. So it wouldn't be impacting any of these type of areas on the fringes of the pond.
No.
And my question was that you're allowed, or a developer is allowed to put a road on some wetland, but is it allowed to put a road on a potential vernal pool? I guess that was my question.
But it's been determined there are no vernal
no,
pools
no,
there. Just because it's wet and it looks like a pool, it isn't necessarily, it could be
Right.
just a wetland that's filled up for a
It
while.
is not a
And
significant
I'm suggesting it
vernal
because
pool.
of the wood frog
I understand.
breeding that is happening there in the spring, that I didn't know that had been looked at.
They were out there. There are 4 different letters that are referenced from the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife and the DEP. And
Yeah.
the significant vernal pool has to be of a certain size, or has to be a certain number of egg masses. So there are vernal pools, but by state determination, they are less than significant.
Right, and that was for the one vernal pool on the
Right.
lower
And
part of
and
that
was
lot.
the
of
only
that
one
saying
lot.
that
met
there
the
are other
criteria.
vernal pools in the area, perhaps, but they're not showing on this particular property.
It's not on the proposed subdivision lot, but the adjacent lot that is affected by that.
Could be.
And I didn't know that had been studied. I didn't see where those areas were studied for
Fair enough.
potential vernal pools.
Got it.
Jim, could we ask Jim to comment on that? The potential for a vernal pool at the edge of the pond?
So normally, the applicant will be allowed to comment after the public hearing portion if they so choose,
Okay,
just
well,
to keep things that way.
let's just keep things moving then.
Okay.
Okay.
Good,
Are there other members of the
Thank you.
public? Here.
thank you.
I'm Cynthia Paquette. I'm in a butter to the
Okay.
proposed.
To the microphone.
development site.
Address to the microphone, thank you.
Is it on? Yes. Okay. There are just 2 points that I'd like to raise, one of which I'm not certain it's meaningful, but I wanted to point it out nevertheless. And I refer first to site map, page 2, in the final application. In general notes, it states that the subject parcel is located within Zone C areas of minimal flood hazard, as delineated on the flood insurance rate map for the town of Kennebunkport, having an effective date of April 18th, 1983. And I was immediately concerned that we are citing a document that is 40 years old, particularly in light of the climate change that we have witnessed and that has been documented. And just to give you an idea, the average annual precipitation for Maine during this period, 1983 period, was 42.2 inches. Today, as of 2023, the average annual precipitation for Maine is 57 inches. That's a 35% increase. And additionally, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, National Centers for Environmental Information, reports that from 1980 to 84, there were extreme precipitation events of 2 inches or more, counting only 2 events. And then 30 years later, from the period of 2010 through 14, there were 4 events. So it doubled in that period of time. And here we are 10 years hence. During this period of 2010 to 14, Maine experienced a record number of 2-inch extreme precipitation events, according to NOAA. Maine, again, this is from NOAA, Maine is projected to see increases in winter and spring precipitation. The frequency of extreme precipitation events is also projected to increase, potentially resulting in increased flood risks and the degradation of surface water quality as greater runoff from more intense storms carries pollutants into freshwater resources. Excuse me. Since this determination of the site as an area of minimal flood hazard is 40 years old, I request, or I wonder if we should request, a reconsideration of the site as a minimal flood hazard. According to the State of Maine Climate Change Institute, 2023 was the wettest summer on record in over 100 years, and the second rainiest growing season since 1895. So we're seeing some very, very dramatic increases in rainfall. And I wonder if having a document dated in 1983 is a realistic perspective for us to hold. Also, what else? I guess that's it. That's point 1. Point 2, and I'm referring to subdivision regulations. Article number 415-11.8, B.4 and 7. Point 4, the subdivision shall reserve sufficient undeveloped land to provide for the recreational needs of the occupants. And then point 7, the developer shall provide 15% of the total area as open space, and at least 1/3 of the total area of open space will be upland areas or areas suitable for recreation. And when I looked at the map, I see primarily wetland and pond in the area that has been set aside. And I have to ask, what types of recreation are envisioned in the wetland and pond that have been retained as open space for recreation? And I did the calculations. I think they're correct. That 1/3 of the open space comes to 8,840 square feet, and I see mostly wetland and pond. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
My name is Mark Paquette. I live at 42 Wiles District Road. I'm in a butter. First of all, I'd like to thank the board. I know you're all volunteers, and we really appreciate this opportunity. And I speak for myself, but I think I speak for the rest of the abutters, is that we will proceed with respect to the board and respect to the applicant and the people working for the applicant. I just have a couple comments. I know a lot of things were uploaded to the website today. We as abutters don't receive those. If we happen to look on the website, we'll see them. And we certainly have not had any chance to review Acorn's response, the applicant's a response to the abutters letters, any of that material. We haven't had a chance. So I'd like to respectfully request that the public hearing portion is continued so that we do have a chance to respond verbally to those issues and other issues that have been brought up tonight, for that matter. This is a holiday weekend, I mean, a holiday eve. Many of the abutters can't make it because of previous plans. I mean, it's the 4th of July tomorrow. That's another reason. I also want to talk a little bit about the abutters. Most of us have been in our homes for over 30 years in the area. Not all of us, but most of us have been there over 30 years. This is our neighborhood. This is our life here. We are concerned for the reasons we've mentioned and the reasons the board has brought up, but we're also concerned because, unless I'm wrong, the applicant does not plan on living there. So he's not like my next door neighbor who wants to build an addition to his house. This is something that's being built by the, sold by the applicant, and that's it, they're gone. They're not living there. We are. We have to live with the results. So there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of concern from the abutters. Last point, there's been a lot of talk about vernal pools and water and so on. And from what I read quickly in the Acorn response today that I happened to see, I know it wasn't posted until the time on it was 1:30 in the afternoon today. What I read quickly is that Acorn is requesting that something still come from the IFW. And so, again, more reason for waiting and having another public hearing so that we can address that as well. So I think that's all I have.
Okay.
And
I
thank you.
will point out that I've notified the applicant that many of the board members haven't seen these documents yet. So we probably will make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anybody else in the audience?
Online?
May I add one more point? Excuse me. One thing I didn't bring up, and that is, you know, there's been a lot of talk about water and vernal pools and so on. Again, having lived there 30 years, we see the overwhelming amount of water, you know, and whether it's vernal pool or runoff or whatever, but there's more and more and more water. There's water in our basements. There's water in most of the abutters' basements. There's water coming across the road from the proposed subdivision site. It's everywhere, you know, and the abutters feel that. They see it. Whether it's, you know, vernal pool or open pond or whatever, it doesn't matter. We see the volume of water. And our concern is you're disrupting that natural flow by something that could make it worse, not better. That's all. Thank you.
Go ahead.
James Vasenka, abutter right on 47 Wiles Dix Road, probably one of the closest people to this particular development. I appreciate and hope something comes out of the, you know, suggestion about the need for a fence for lights, because the way the road is going to be put, people are going to be able to directly look into the dining room and the screen porch and things like that. It's just like all that privacy which we've enjoyed for 25 years, not as long as the others, is going to be gone, and that would be really very sad.
Cool.
My name is Scott Edmonds. I'm an attorney with Bergen and Parkinson. I represent the abutters here and then some others that are not currently here today. but they've asked me to sort of summarize and speak to some of the issues. I did want to, I am admittedly one who sent in a late letter, I don't know if you received it, in which we are asking Maine DEP for reconsideration of not just the May 28th letter, but also the June 17th letter. I know that there may be some that believe that this is just a formality. However, we did want to make a point about on the plan, you will see that there is a stream. It's where the water easements for the 3 lots have. That water course, while determined, and I'm not going to fight the science on it, I'm just going to provide some anecdotal information that may belie a little what the scientists see out there. And that is that during these increased storms, the water flows heavily through that and affects the downhill neighbors, especially those who live on the Rocky Pasture Lane area. Is it Road Lane? Drive. Sorry about that. But those downhill neighbors are greatly affected by the amount of water that flows out of that pond and down through that water course. So while our initial hope was that it would be a blue line stream, it's not. We are basically we have the right to seek a reconsideration with the Maine DEP. We have 30 days to make that call, and we are going to do that. It is not due until later on, about 2 weeks from today. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. That's basically the contents of the letter. I also just wanted to state that this is, as you know, a very wet spot. And for that reason, and that is why you're getting so much attention from the abutters, is the concern that you start taking this water, this is a very wet, and you start reducing the amount of places where that water can go, and it's going to become more wet at around the abutters. I'm not going to fight the science on it. I'm just sort of generally bringing that up as a general point. And that's why you're getting so much consideration about this. Not just in addition to the lights in the driveway and all the other things that come along with new development. But it is specifically the wetness that is, I think, causing so much consternation here. And while there are reasons and ways to be dismissed, that some of the complaints or statements that have been made today can be dismissed through legal arguments. I don't want the statements to be lost or dismissed just based upon the legal arguments that could be made. I think that what you're seeing is more extreme weather, more wet, more rainfall, and when it falls harder and with more intensity, and that means that there's more water flowing through those water courses. So I understand that there are standards. I'm not saying you dismiss those. I'm just saying that the other side of that needs to be taken into consideration as well. Furthermore, and I think that because it is so wet, it is imperative upon this board, and the abutters are relying heavily on this board to look at all of the standards and look at all of the setbacks and to look at everything, maybe in a way that might be a little bit more deeply, in a deeper way than you may others, given the amount of concern you see from the abutters here. And that is, well, I'll end it today. I do think that there are a lot of questions out there. I would encourage a continuance of this because so much of this information has come in so late and had an opportunity, we haven't had an opportunity to review that. We have, as you know, employed our scientists of our, someone who can look this stuff over and provide it to us in a language that we can understand. So I would encourage a continuance of the public hearing. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have one question. With consideration of the water that we all experience, I know that many of the abutters have videos or still photographs of the effect of a significant rainfall on their properties. Will there be an opportunity, for example, at the next public hearing to show those photographs and videos so that you can all understand what it is we're talking about?
I think we've seen some of those that the abutters have sent in.
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
I would ask the tech crew, how would a member of the public go about providing, what format would they have to provide something in if they wanted to show an MP4, for example, of, or have a JPEG projected onto the screen here? So yes, I think is what I'm hearing. You would be asked to provide it. How far in advance, guys, would you need it?
At least several hours.
So the day before would be,
And where do we send it? How do we provide it?
Town office?
Probably it's appropriate to send to Nadia.
Nadia, would you be okay with receiving that?
I think the code's.
So the code office, Nadia would do that. Appreciate that, Nadia.
Is that the right way, Galen?
That's fine. And just to remind the board regarding video evidence, the developer had to meet pre- and post-development. So what was existing and current on the site has to meet post-development calculations, which they have in their
Yeah.
calculations. So I just want to make you all aware of that.
I'm not sure I understood what you just said.
The
Calculations of
developer,
what?
the developer has to meet our standards for pre- and post-development. So I don't know how the video evidence is going to help, I guess, with the application in determining what the post-development calculations are.
I don't either. I don't either, but I thought that if the public wanted to
Is
show a
the
picture
video
or a
evidence
movie,
helpful
then
for the board?
What?
Is the video evidence helpful for the board?
we haven't seen
That's
it.
what I guess I want to know, like, is that,
We'd have to see it and see it in perspective to, where it is, know where it is and so forth, know what was there before. It would be helpful, but,
We didn't ask for it, but I don't see any reason why it couldn't be shown. I don't think it would take a lot of time.
yes?
Just a quick question, would a URL?
Use the microphone.
Would a URL to a YouTube video be sufficient?
that should work.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there's nobody else in the audience?
I have one.
Okay.
Is there anything to prevent the abutters from accompanying the DEP on another site visit? I mean, what has happened is basically the DEP and the applicant's employee or contracted person have been the only ones to walk it and to show various things and so on. We haven't had that perspective.
Well, I don't believe the DEP gives a public notice, but the applicant.
But not with the DEP. DEP wasn't on the sidewalk with
You-
us.
Mike, are you suggesting that when the DEP comes back to do their consult, that it be made into a site walk? Is that what you're saying?
I'm suggesting
I'm
the
confused.
DEP is not gonna be back out there.
Oh,
Why would they be?
okay.
They've already
They've made
the
3
determination.
site visits. My point was, this board and members of the public already conducted a site walk where we walked around the entire site,
Yeah.
saw the potential vernal pool, saw the man-made pool, saw the drainage channel, and walked everywhere anyone wanted to walk.
Some places we didn't want to. Very
I misunderstood. Somebody said something earlier about a consultation from the DEP. No, it wasn't somebody, it was Acorn.
Right.
Saying that it was still required, that the DEP had asked for it and it was yet to be provided. Did Did I misread that?
That's an application for the vernal pool and so forth. That's just a,
Okay, but may I just say that the DEP was not on the initial sidewalk. We were on the initial sidewalk.
That's correct.
That's the first time that we had walked the land at all, you
That's
see,
correct.
because it's private property, so we didn't have a chance before that, obviously.
well, what
So-
Mike is saying is there's no reason for the DEP to come back to that site.
Well, may I just say that the DEP has been there 3 times. Each time, they seem to have a different opinion. I'm a little confused, because one time they say it's not a stream, the next time they say it is a stream, and then they say it's not a stream. I
Well-
mean, is there not, with all due respect, it's a little confusing for us,
Well,
because,
the first time out basically was in a season where it was difficult to tell whether you had the criteria for a stream. Okay? When they came back out later in the season, okay, they could determine that the vegetation wasn't there to characterize it as a stream. Okay, so it's not that they were conflicting with each other. It's just that they were trying to find all of the criteria they needed to determine whether it was a stream or it wasn't a stream. And that can be hard to do in winter.
it also seemed to that point as well, I understand, and thank you, but to that point as well, I'm not sure if the DEP looked at the pond and looked at what's surrounding the pond as a potential vernal pool. All I have seen is that they looked at the stream and made a determination of that.
The first person out did look at the pond, I don't think made a determination on the pond itself, but was looking at the outlets from the pond. And if they had seen vernal pools, I think they would have noted it.
Okay. Okay.
They do that. You can ask them for reconsideration. I don't know if they'll send somebody out.
Yeah.
But if you ask them for reconsideration and they're willing to go with you and you get the permission to be on the property, then you can walk it with them.
I guess that's, if it does happen, that's something we would like to see, involvement in.
But I think you'd find the DEP is not on one side or another. They're looking
agreed.
to actually find out what was
Agreed.
there.
Agreed. Okay. But we do have, wetland scientists in the room here who is on one side. So we like a fair and honest perspective that Acorn can give and the DEP can give.
You can also hire your own wetland specialist to go out there and look at it themselves.
Not on private property.
Oh, not on private property, I'm sorry. You would have to get permission to go onto private property, that is correct.
Thank you.
We have someone online, too.
Yeah, hold on for a second. Is that everybody in the audience? Okay. Do we have people online with their hands up?
No.
No, okay. All right, Jeff.
I
Oh,
ju-
wait a minute.
Aubrey just raised.
Okay. In that case,
Aubrey, you can speak when you unmute.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
yeah.
Okay, I just didn't want to get into any details
Could
about
you
the
state your
discussion.
name and your address, please?
I'm sorry, yes, thank you. My name is Aubrey Strauss. I'm a professional engineer with Acorn Engineering. And I was one of the 2 engineers who reviewed a lot of materials in preparation for this hearing. And you did get our letter dated today. I just wanted to say there are a couple pieces of information that were presented at this meeting that I think conflict with some of the information that we reviewed. And some of the questions brought up by the board, specifically with respect to not being able to construct septic systems, roads, dwellings within 250 feet. Those are things that we had commented on back in December in our first review. So with the board's permission, I'd like to update the memo that we provided today to point to some of the very specific information that we looked at and used to form our opinions. And also I wanted to clarify that we didn't do any independent calculation of the lot areas. We don't have the AutoCAD drawings. And we did not do any kind of calculation of the pond area. We relied on what was provided by Teradyne in its response to our January, in its response in January to some of our comments on what the ponded area was. We also just got the Longview report yesterday. So we have to look and see how those numbers match up.
Okay, thank you. Are there others? No others?
Ask a question of Aubrey. Ask a question of Aubrey. Aubrey, in your January letter, I believe that that 250 setback was based on a determination that the pond was larger than 20,000 square feet. I think that was how it was referenced. Is that correct?
No, it is simply a question on the application form, on the planning board's own application form, where it asks the applicant to say yes or no if the project is located within 250 feet of the pond.
Okay.
And the applicant did not answer that question.
All right, thank you.
May I make a comment as well? Aubrey, I'm going to read from the Acorn comments on the preliminary plan. I don't have the date of that, but it was back in, it must have been, what, December timeframe? It's on the preliminary. And it says, comments on the natural resources. Acorn estimates that the pond has an overall water surface area of approximately 36,000 square feet, based on the water surface line depicted on sheet C 2.0. So that's what got us moving in the direction that says Acorn says it's 36,000 square feet.
I understand, and that's a good point. And that was just an estimate, and
of course,
we would certainly defer to Longview Partners in doing a more thorough boots on the ground evaluation of the open pond area. But I also wanted to point out that in other documentations, the open pond area was stated as being 4,065 square feet. That's one of the numbers I'd like to go back and dig into more to compare the ponded area that was presented in a previous document with the ponded area that's included in the Longview report.
I suspect that 4,000-ish number had to do with the amount of pond that was on the property itself, not the pond in its entirety.
That could absolutely be the case.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions for Aubrey? No. Okay. Jeff?
I just had a quick comment. So I want to, and it was something I actually was going to speak to tonight. Now, I want to make just a point that's clear, I guess, certainly for the butters and for the board. The licensed people that, whenever I put an application forth for a project, be it a subdivision or a site plan, the folks that do the work and come up with the evidence or the data that is submitted as part of that application is not done at my behest. It's not done, the evidence is not generated for the benefit of whatever I want the application to say. These are licensed professionals, be it civil engineers or wetland scientists. Their licensure is their livelihood. If they no different than a structural engineer, right? That licensure is what pays the bills, okay? That information that they generate is not, they don't just tell me what I want to hear. They tell me what I don't want to hear all the time. We don't gather around when we leave here and try to figure out a way to skirt around the rules. The rules are the rules, the standards and the ordinances that are set forth by the town is the documents and the rules that we have to follow. And if we can't meet them, the application can't go forward, and sometimes it doesn't go forward. So, but what I do want to make clear is, and I somewhat resent the fact, that it would be implied by anyone within this room that the information that's being provided by these licensed individuals might be somehow inaccurate from what's actually reported in the field, because that's not the case at all.
And we understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I want to ask us all a question. When you read the Acorn report, in fact, maybe Aubrey would comment on this. Does the Acorn report say, does it assure the abutters that this stormwater BMP, if it is maintained properly, will make sure that the abutters are done no harm? That if any, it won't be any worse than it is now under a bad storm, and we do have some bad storms, and this is a wet area. But does Acorn, in its assessment, can it say in plain language that this three-lot subdivision will not make things worse for the abutters? Can I read that into the technical language? Anyone else have a comment on that on the board?
I don't think you can ever predict that things will not get worse.
No. Well, that this subdivision with the BMP is constructed to make things at least as good and maybe better than it is today.
The whole design,
Yes,
and not that we may have larger storm events, can't
control that.
Can't control that, we're not God, all right? But this new proposed layout would be at least as good as, if not better than, if it was just a storm event there.
That's what I want to hear.
I mean, things that I heard that helped get me there was the fact that the road is all tipped and sloped to the pond.
Yep.
So it would, the abutter on the one side should actually see less from that. Now, snow removal and stuff like that, I don't know. But, and the pond has an outlet. It can't fill any more than it's full.
Right.
Even if you put more water in it, you know, it's gonna go out. So, I mean, even if you have impermeable areas, it's still gonna go to the pond or to that, whatever we're calling that thing in the back, the creek, the stream, the seasonal ditch, whatever that
Yep.
is. It's gonna go there and go.
Down onto Walker's Point eventually. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I was getting there because that was one of my major concerns was, you know, what was happening with storm runoff. And I couldn't get there that this was gonna impact it negatively by flowing more water off the lot into areas that it would be a concern.
I agree with that. I'd like,
And I mean,
I
that
looked for
was my
something that
reading.
read a little more stronger, though, that said it's not going to be worse.
So to clarify, you have a licensed engineer hired by the consultant, the developer, who has put his stamp on as a professional engineer that these HydroCAD calculations are correct.
Yes.
They were verified by Acorn
Acorn.
Engineering, which is a licensed engineer.
What do they mean, though?
It says the stormwater management report addresses both water quality and quantity on the site. And so they addressed the
And
25-year rain events, that's the max.
yeah,
So 100-year rain events that may still occur are still going to exceed the runoff.
oh, yeah.
That's going to happen. Your standards only allow for 25 years.
Understood, yeah.
So
And when that
that's,
happens, is it going to be worse than if this subdivision had never been built?
we can't go off that and deviate from that. Your standards say 25 years. That's
Yeah,
in your
but-
performance standards.
But what, I think what Ed was asking
Help me
is,
out here.
with that 25 years, the system is designed to handle that,
From what pre-development is versus post-development.
post-development.
Correct me if
and
I'm wrong, Mike.
Two people put their stamp on that.
Yep,
Put it
you
in
have two
plain
professional engineers that are attesting that this is designed as,
And as an engineer or a once engineer looking at it, I got to the same place. Because that was one of my major concerns.
Larry?
Well, my interpretation of the stormwater management report is that the road configuration really is gonna direct flow away from the abutters to the east, and then the pond is going to be a collection point that then drains down the little drainage channel.
Right.
So,
Larry, could you speak?
25-year storm, I mean, to me, it actually might improve the situation on the abutters to the east, and it's not gonna make it any worse on the abutters to the north. And then the downstream off the plot, well, we don't really know about them, but we presume that they're not gonna experience anything more than what they've already experienced. So my impression was that the stormwater management report satisfied the intent to either improve or at least not make any worse the situation during stormwater events. I mean, that's the conclusion I came to.
I read it, I read the same thing in, but it just troubled me that I had to work so hard to read it into it, and that it didn't tell me,
Engineer's
don't
language.
worry, yeah,
It's
yeah.
almost as bad as lawyer's language.
I thought
Well, maybe it's that simple.
I thought the design was actually very careful and cognizant of the issues. I mean,
Yeah.
I really didn't expect this question to come up because I thought it was just obvious on the face of it, to be honest.
No, it's not obvious on the face of it. I think people that are in this community are living in one of the wetter areas of a wet town.
Yeah.
And are nervous about this, so
Fair.
like to hear some plain language.
Aubrey has raised her hand again, if you wish to hear from her.
Yeah.
Would that be all right if we let Aubrey talk for just a second from Acorn?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to say something that we could do that might be valuable to both the applicant and the board is if we update our memo, I can go through in plain language what we look at when we look at the HydroCAD calculations. I can say in plain language why we believe that the HydroCAD model reflects the proposed project, including the new focal point filter and storage tanks. And I can say in plain language why we believe the assumptions that are built into that model are appropriate. If that would be helpful, it's something essentially we've already done. I will just write it down.
Yes, it would.
That might be helpful, but I was, Aubrey, looking for something that was sort of from an abutter's point of view that said, and so because we modeled it and our model is accurate and because we were careful about it, we're not gonna make a wet situation worse by this development. We have protected the abutters from that. In fact, we may have made it better.
And the model looks at a couple different points at which water leaves the property now and would continue to leave the property. So all we can really do is look at those specific points that were modeled and
Right.
say, it's not increasing at this point, it's not increasing at that point, it's not increasing at this point.
And
So, you know, to the
Yeah.
extent that they chose study points that are reasonable and that the model accurately reflects how water is going to be running through the site, we can talk about those modeled points specifically, but I think probably neither Teradyne nor I would ever be able to say something to the effect that it's not going to get worse.
that the development is not going to worsen the situation. It may get worse, but it won't be because of this development. Can you say that?
We can say that based on these assumptions and
Yes, of
how the
course.
model reflects the site,
Right.
that it's not going to increase flow during
Yeah.
specific storm events that were modeled.
There are some pretty nasty events that have been modeled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. When
Yeah.
we'll say the inches of rain that were modeled in each of the model runs.
Yeah, I
So
don't,
you can say, you know, during that certain storm size, it will not get worse
Okay.
at this point, at that point, at the third point.
So
all you can do.
I think that to satisfy Ed's question, you almost have to do a drainage study for the abutters. You have to know where the drainage is going for the abutters, and then you can determine how this development would affect that.
I'm not asking for that.
Yeah, I don't think that's a performance standard.
And
Well,
I don't,
that's what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
think that would be, That's not what I'm asking for. Let me just say that. I don't,
I'm not recommending we do that, but I
Okay.
think the only way to actually to verify this question is to actually.
Is this
expand
plan
the-
meeting the standards of your,
Yeah.
and that's what you have, that's the question you should be asking yourselves.
That's right. So that's right. So if you want to ask whether the stormwater management report satisfies the requirements in the subdivision and land use ordinance, then in my mind, it does.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that's good.
that's,
And I think that's the plain language that I'm looking for, that says we modeled relevant points, and under the storms, the 25-year storms, we're not going to increase the flow at those points.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my interpretation.
Did I say that wrong, Jeff?
No, it's good.
We've done all that, Ed.
I know, I wanted it said that plainly. I know you've done it.
I will
I
read.
don't, I think that's getting lost in the
In the pages.
technology. I think we've got this much report, and we just need a synopsis that says,
I will read the first paragraph of my cover letter
all right,
from May 20th, 2024.
I remember.
the Final
no, I don't
subdivision
remember. I'm
application.
sorry.
Under the subheading Stormwater Management. Stop me when I've reached a sentence that needs plainer language.
Okay,
The project was designed to meet the stormwater performance standards of the town of Kennebunkport subdivision regulations. Stormwater runoff from the proposed road will flow to a focal point vegetated soil filter located on the west side of the road. Everyone there so far?
Yeah.
where's the west side?
100%.
Which is the west side
Towards the
again?
pond.
To the left.
The west?
West.
Toward the pond?
Yeah, toward the
Yeah.
pond.
Thank you.
That is west.
At approximate road station 2+75,
Yeah.
which can be seen on the plan,
Got it.
right? Stormwater will flow through the engineered focal point filter media, so there's an engineered soil, into a series of underground storage chambers prior to being discharged to the ground surface and flowing into the existing man-made pond located in the northwest corner of the site.
Right.
The man-made pond will serve to attenuate peak flow rates and will discharge runoff at a controlled rate through the drainage ditch that flows through the project from north to south. Right? So the capacity of that ditch controls the rate at which water leaves that pond. The developed portions of lots 1 and 2, so these are the areas that will be lawn or, right, these are those building footprints that we've shown on the plan, not undeveloped areas. Those are wooded and will remain untouched. Drainage patterns will remain as they are today. The developed portions of lots 1 and 2 will be graded, so the land will be altered, so it's sloped in certain ways. So they drain north to the man-made pond rather than south directly to the southern property boundary. By directing runoff from the developed portion of the lots into the pond, peak rates of runoff will be attenuated, matching the existing peak rates of runoff at the southern property boundary. The implementation of the stormwater management system will ensure that runoff from the road will receive water quality treatment, and peak rates of runoff from the project site will be limited to pre-development levels. More information on stormwater runoff is provided in the stormwater management report that's attached. So I think our exasperation over here is we feel like we've done this. So
Thank you.
I'm nervous saying anything. I do not know anything about stormwater runoff. I've researched wood frogs, but that's it. My property is, if you can see the map, actually follows the pond right on my property line and follows the stream or whatever comes off, whatever outlet comes out of that pond. how that will affect my backyard, which is flooded a lot in recent years. With the stream, pond water increasing and the outlet increasing, that's something I will have to ask somebody, and maybe it's a good idea for me to get, an expert opinion on that. My lawn is at the level of the stream. I don't know how that will affect it, but I think that's something that, I should look at. With the road tilting toward the pond, I'm right there. So, I may look at having that done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else who wants to make a comment? Okay. Then, given that we all haven't had a chance to really study the new material that came in, and we're waiting for a hard copy of a plan, I recommend, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Yes, I would agree.
All in favor? I'm in favor.
I'm in favor.
Okay, motion passed. There will be a continued public hearing on 2 weeks from now,
That'd be the 17th. huh?
17th, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
And just for my clarification for homework assignment for code and planning, you would like a legal opinion regarding the net residential area. That's different between the land use ordinance and subdivision regs.
Right.
You want the site plan conditions. Do they apply to a subdivision regs? That's also another legal opinion as well.
Yeah.
And then the only thing I heard tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the applicant is about adding a culvert to the plan that was missing.
The entrance permit requires a culvert at the entrance and clearing of bush. So,
The entrance permit was dated 2001
yeah, it's way, way back.
and
But
refers
they-
to a 12 to 15-foot drive. I don't know if that means we need to have a current entrance permit, but the permit is, over 20 years old.
Wasn't it based on speed and sight distances?
Speed and sight distances of what it looked like 20 years ago.
That's Wells District Road, which has just been
Yeah.
Yeah.
refurbished,
Yeah.
so maybe it does.
That's all I have. Is that,
I don't know of any other properties that have gone in. Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
okay?
all right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, that takes care of that item, the Lily Pond subdivision for a while.
Yeah.
Old business, this is my era, and that when I wrote up the findings of fact for 293 Goose Rocks Road, when I put in the conditions, the items that I had for conditions under 1010A were from A to J, and I mentioned A to I instead of J, and also wrote A to I, so it just needs a corrected findings of fact.
Okay.
Do we have those to sign?
Yep.
Okay, so we can pass those down and just sign them. Do we need to make a motion again? I don't think so.
I would just make a motion for the record. That way we have it in the minutes. And if you want to just state the section that was corrected,
Thank you.
I think that would be fine.
Okay. Give me one of those and I'll find the section that's corrected.
Yeah. Should be at the very end.
Okay. For the record, I am making a motion that section 9 reads subsection A through J, the events, the limitations on the events that the Nonantum Hotel will hold. And in the conclusions and decision, okay, I listed the applicant pursuant to Article 10, 5.11 of the LUO, they would be restricted to the conditions listed in section A through I, and it should be J, and this is a corrected findings of fact.
Yep.
Okay, somebody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, everybody in favor?
Agree.
Aye,
Agree.
I agree, yeah.
okay.
Right.
I'll give that back to you. Pass on.
All right, being of age that I'm a non-tech person,
What?
a non-technical person, when we're talking about where these documents are, I went to a link in one of the emails that took me to the town website, which took me to a folder that had this site in it, and there were like 9 items. I downloaded all those this week, and there seemed to be ones that we were talking about that weren't part of the ones that I downloaded. So I don't know if when stuff gets added to that, do we get a note or a message, or is it just up to us to go hunt and find prior to the meeting?
So.
I'm not sure how that works.
Yep, so there should be an email notification. Nadia set it up for all your email accounts that you should be getting some sort of an email thing that says, okay, so we need to work on Ed's. And Mike, you didn't get one? You didn't
I
get a
haven't got
notification?
any emails that are, says, any notification emails yet.
It just says a file has been added to this, okay. So we'll take a look, we'll have Nadia take a look and,
It could just be my system too, I may
Right.
not be
Are you getting
configured
that, Nina?
correctly.
Well, the town's changed, it has the new website.
so yeah, it is
So
on
the town
the,
has the new website that you gotta sign up for, and I think some people are signing, I mean, I found this, I signed up for it. But there's a place where documents are being stored, and yeah, and you gotta sign up for it. If you haven't quite signed up for that, you might not get, I think there are some issues.
Yeah.
So, and
it
the emails seem to be, at least for me, are coming from no reply. And it's just kind of one of those, that's, they're trying to change that, but I think part of it is,
I'm not sure. I'm
David,
getting
you're
all of
speaking of a
them.
different
there's
place.
there's two systems.
There's Documents on Demand, which is part of the overall new website. What we're speaking of in this meeting is a SharePoint share site that I set up, and Nadia administers for documents that pertain to the planning board.
I saw a list of nested folders, is that
Yep,
it?
that's it. Yep, so if you go on the planning board website, I'll do a quick little tutorial if you can all see. On your planning board page that's on the town website, there is one that says View Active Applications. This will automatically pull up the active applications for the planning board. So they're all there that are currently active for the town.
And then if we hit,
So if you hit like Lily Pond, it will pull that up and show you either you have final, their preliminary, or their sketch. Then you would just go into their final.
I just got one that gave me 9 documents. I
Yep.
didn't get the difference, so this must be the SharePoint site, which is different than the link I was using to get there.
Yeah, don't go to the general town website. and
There
go
was an
plan-
Yeah.
email that had a highlighted hyperlink that I clicked and took me there.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's all I did.
Yeah, you should now, it should be all on the website. Public has access to this portal. It's the same, you have all the same access. So butter letters are in here, application, and any additional documentation, which it's all here and it has the date stamp of when it was uploaded. So you can always sort that too. If you know that, okay, it's July 2nd, I want to see anything that was submitted last week. You can even filter it by date if you wish.
But if I'm getting that, when a document is added to that,
Yep, you should be getting something, because all planning board members, we did add that for them.
No, we're not, I'm not getting that, but I also, there seemed to be something about I had to have a Microsoft account of some sort, Microsoft 365 access required.
Microsoft Office 365. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So is that the reason why they wouldn't get email notifications?
I just renewed.
Well, we will work with, so it's Ed so far and Mike that haven't gotten the email notifications, but George, you've gotten them.
I've gotten email, but I'm not certain I got the one from was it Teradyne at the beginning of last week, end of last week, beginning of this week that they
Yeah,
mentioned?
I didn't get that
I
one
didn't get a
Who,
notification
who,
for that.
who,
no.
who have you been getting notifications from?
from the
It
town.
just comes from the folder.
It doesn't come from April?
Nope,
No.
nope.
No, no, I'm asking
I'm gonna.
George.
I'm gonna look. I just get I got
'Cause I
one
know-
from
I
Galen,
understand that's what's
today.
intended. I just
Yeah,
wanna
I
see
got the one from Galen today, and I was able to access all of the folders that it linked to.
From Galen's email, there was a link, I agree.
Yeah.
But if I just try to go at it from the town, I wasn't sure I.
I'm having trouble from just logging in from the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't figure.
I got Nadia telling me about the shared drive. Prior to that, I think I've just been getting it, I got one from Galen, but,
If you use
I don't think we're
Nadia's
getting
link
this
and you go into the
notification. I don't think
shared
anyone's
drive,
getting it.
yeah.
bookmark it.
So the files are there.
No, no, I
Yep,
believe you.
they're-
I
they're-
believe you.
yep.
I know they are.
Go right
I know
to
they
Yep.
are.
It may be best practice
Yeah.
for members of
Just
the
do it
board to just
offline.
once
You
a
can-
week go in and look to
Nadia,
see
you
if
can
things
use
have
me
been
as a guinea
updated.
pig if you want.
Yep.
We'll sort this out.
We had some technical, we had some difficulties with the link. Dave and I did some workshopping, and the best way for you to go is just go through the website. That one's kind of our final iteration, and you can bookmark that page. It has exactly the same permissions as the link I originally sent you guys. But we've sort of fixed everything so that anybody can access it. You shouldn't need a Microsoft account to do so. I've tested it out on my phone from my Gmail, on a couple different browsers. So the website is definitely your easiest path.
So since we're
that's
live,
where
I mean, let me just say that having developed software for a living for 30, 40 years, this is all normal. This isn't like somebody isn't paying attention. This always, we need some beta testing, and again, I'll volunteer to be the guinea pig. If you want to, call me up, we can do a test together, and you'll have at least one planning board member saying, yes, it worked for me, and I used an Apple account. And, and we'll get someone else who uses their iPhone or whatever, and we'll just make sure that it's right.
Sure.
Really appreciate you doing it. I think it's a really important and useful step up, and it's gonna help us all.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Yes.
that was the struggle we were having, is just the multiple of emails
Oh,
that people
God.
were getting.
Yeah.
Things get lost, and so we thought, okay, this is a single server, easy for you all to access it, the public has access to
Much
it.
easier.
Yeah,
And the
or-
public has access, and we've got
Yeah, it's date
timestamps.
stamped of when it was uploaded.
This is really
Yeah.
good.
And
Excellent.
the emails can sometimes fall through the cracks,
Yeah.
Okay.
and this is.
At my house, yep.
All right. Well, we have some time left, and there is some new business.
Yes.
And the question is, do you want to take up the rules and procedures right now, or do you want to take up the minutes?
So, I wanted to just go over with you, I gave you all a sheet. I think this is easier, just to show you a flow chart sheet
good.
of,
Two sides.
what's your process for the subdivision review, site plan review. And so one page is your subdivision review process, and the other one is on the site plan approval.
Yeah.
And for folks that are attending virtually, this can be found on the SharePoint drive. It's just on your planning board section. Oh, no, that's not there yet, is it? That's the application.
up there.
Yep, okay. So with that, I tried to go through your subdivision regs, chapter by chapter, and I went this over with Nina a little bit in my office, and we went over what the sketch plan process looks like, the preliminary plan process looks like, and then each of the different steps that take place through preliminary plan and final plan. And so I think it's helpful just to picture this, that way we can see what actions the board takes that starts the clock for approving or denying an application. And so you'll see on your preliminary plan, basically, once you find the application complete, is when that starts the clock for the planning board review for a public hearing. And then if you don't, if you find the application complete but don't have a public hearing, you'll see at the approval process, you have 60 days after finding the application complete. And so it's important that we all get on the same page of what does it mean to have a complete application. It's just a conversation to have. And then for your rules, there was some things I will show you in the rules to make us a little bit more flexible and nimble when it comes to meeting times and allowing staff the opportunity to send things to Acorn for peer review. so if you see in the planning board, the preliminary plan section, the highlighted sections, basically, we require the applications to be submitted 30 days prior to the meeting. And so what I'm proposing is giving staff the discretion to send this information to Acorn Engineering, your peer review, if it's warranted, if it's a complex subdivision, to get that expert information and the memo to you for your initial review. That way you should have most of the documents all in line. There should be no outstanding documents or things missing. You should all be speaking the same language from the planner's memo and Acorn's memo to help guide you in your review process to determine if the application is complete. And so you can see the other sections that are here. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have. But I just wanted to start that conversation on, is this process, is everyone comfortable with it? And then what would you determine as a complete application?
Where do you see the complete application coming in this process? Where is that decision made?
So you'll see under your initial review of preliminary, it says at the last bullet point, planning board determines application is complete or not complete.
And I would
Oh, down here.
recommend, I
Got it,
would
got it.
recommend that it's not complete if we still have substantive issues to determine, not minor ones like you have to add this to the plan or that to the plan, you know, and update the map. But something like, there's a big question over stormwater report, and we still don't have an Acorn report, and we want to review that. Then I would find that the application is not complete until we have the report in and we've reviewed it with the applicant.
So let's just do an example. Not that it's the preliminary, but we just 2 weeks ago, we determined that the final plan was complete.
And we still had substantive issues that we hadn't dealt with.
That was where I was gonna go. So basically doing a self-reflection here and saying maybe we should be a little more conservative in giving that blessing of completeness.
Exactly.
And I think it would be fair if we somehow try to capture what you say, I mean, okay, substantive, not minor, if it's give some examples in there to help guide and make us consistent, so minor changes to plans.
Major change, major.
Yeah, and what's a minor, what's a major, you know, not having we call it the Acorn report or the other external review, that's major. So if we could have some definition to help guide us of what that means, instead of going forward.
So you do have a definition for complete application in your subdivision regulations, and I'll read it to you.
Okay.
It's an application shall be considered complete upon submission of the required fee and all information required by these regulations, with the exception of those submissions that have been waived by a vote of the board. The board shall issue a written statement to the applicant upon its determination that the application is complete. I don't know if we've ever done that. That's, okay, you've given them,
On a preliminary? Yeah, we give them a letter,
okay. The case manager writes that?
yes.
Okay. So that's your definition.
And
All
I just put some flavor behind that, saying, okay, those are great words, what does that mean in actuality? The Acorn report gots to have, minor addition to the plan, no. Just so we know what's in, so we've got some breaks versus nice verbs.
Well, if you look at LUO and you look at major revisions versus minor revisions, and why you have to go through a full review for a major revision, think about what they list there.
And it
Lot
may be
lines
just a reference to
Well,
that.
let's do another example.
Let me pull that back because that was site plan, and we'll get to that conversation. We're in subdivision right now. I'm describing the subdivision process right now. The back page is gonna be site plan, but we're gonna stick on subdivision. You have, language in your subdivision regs that have for minor and major subdivision revisions. So you do have that criteria already baked in, and that's the process it goes under. Yep.
Let me do another example, because I like Mike's idea of testing this to make sure that we're all understanding it rather than just saying we all understand it. What about, we need a letter from the fire chief saying that he's okay with the fact that we're not gonna require a fire hydrant, or the turnaround distance is gonna be okay for the fire engine, or do we need that in order to say that this application is complete? I say yes. We haven't done that historically, but if we're saying complete is complete, that would be a good one. That's kind of a boundary one, right? What do you think? What about opening this, the site checking the site distances on the street?
Well, wait a minute, what if you have, for example, a plan that has fire hydrants already, and you're all set up, okay? And it's a preliminary plan.
Yeah,
And you need to get an approval letter, all you need is an approval letter from the fire chief.
yeah.
That may not be substantive. You already have in the plan where the hydrants are going and what kind of fire suppression system you have. Okay, all you're looking for is an approval.
Yeah, but that is, having
that's a
the
good
fire
example.
chief go out there and say, yeah, I'm good with what's on the plan. That's basically what the letter says, be it,
Yeah.
I've looked at the plan, I agree with where the hydrants are, I agree that the hammerhead or turning distance is right,
So the plan is complete and reviewable.
versus saying it's approved, but you gotta go get this letter.
So if all we're looking for is the approval, then we could say it was complete. Okay, so there's an example, of a,
Just to give some boundaries and bumpers to this.
Okay, well, suppose you have your hammerhead turnaround, but instead of a hammerhead turnaround, they have a new kind of turnaround, and the fire chief has never reviewed it. That might be substantive.
If it's not the standard template that he's provided,
Right,
and then, yeah, you're doing something unique, I think you need to have some from the chief.
right,
It's
that
a
would be substantive.
it's a complete application, but it has to be approved. So I think it is complete, but not approved. The example you just gave.
Yeah, but you might have to change your
You might.
your whole plan around.
Yeah, but, so if I say it's complete, what happens?
So
It
once
advances.
once you say it's complete, once you all make that motion, that starts the clock for the public hearing, if you so choose in the preliminary, that's optional.
Yeah.
And then for final approval, it's 60 days after you find the application complete. It's 30 days after the public hearing.
So by doing that, what
You have to
happens
take
if the
action.
chief, what happens if the chief comes back and says he doesn't like that?
Same thing that happens now. The plan has to change or we don't approve it.
But we just said it was complete.
Yes, we did. We didn't
The
approve it, though.
preliminary.
Complete, but not approved.
I'm just worried, have we let a ball get rolling here that we don't want to get rolling? Or we,
I think.
You may want to
think-
think,
yes,
I
we
know it's
may.
not my, but you may want to think about it from the developer's standpoint or the public standpoint. When they hear the word complete, it's complete. They're not then going to want to start revisiting stuff. That's what I think we're running into, is people are hearing the word complete, but they're not necessarily, they're taking it different than what the board is taking it. And I think you do have to think of it from their perspective.
fair.
But to Mike's point, then, do we still need the approval part if declaring it complete means that we're happy with it? See, I think there is a step between all the pieces are there. Now we're gonna review it, and you know what? We might find something wrong. Somebody from the public might bring something up. Somebody might go back and inspect the plan. Some of these plans are quite complex. Might inspect it more carefully and say, oh, this is missing. So that's still it's gonna happen.
So it all depends on what your
But I think
definition is
the
complete.
problem we've had is that we've been a little bit loose with saying, well, these are good guys. I know this is a major piece, the Acorn piece, good example. And it'll probably come in the next 2 weeks. Why would we hold it up? Because when we don't, we deliberately insert a 2-week delay in the developer's schedule.
Right.
And the clock is ticking.
If we don't say it's complete, though, we've cost them 2 weeks that they can't recoup.
And for instance, we say that it's complete, but then there's going to some public hearing within 30 days.
Yeah.
But it's that Thanksgiving week, and then there's the snowstorm, and then there's the clock does tick.
That's right.
Well, my preference is that when we declare an application complete, we actually have everything we need, including a comment from the fire chief or anybody else, so that, so that there's no question that we have the information we think we need for a complete, evaluation of a complete, application. And I must admit, I've been a little concerned sometimes when we declare applications complete, except that you have to go get the site distance, or you have to go get
Yeah,
the letter from
yeah.
the fire chief. See, that's a bit ambiguous. I mean, I've been saying okay, but to me, it would be, I'd feel more comfortable when we say it's complete. That means we have every little piece of thing we need, including maybe the DEP and the inland fisheries, I don't know. All those little bits and pieces, because there's such a big swirl of people, of agencies that are involved in these applications.
And
But in my view, when we say it's complete, that means, okay, we don't need anything else. Now we can have a public hearing on this body of work, and then we can move forward to the next.
You just said something important there.
What's
It's
that?
that it's ready for the public hearing.
Ready for the public
Right, and a
hearing.
lot of times, we see ourselves, and we use the time before the public hearing, but after we declared it was complete, for the board to ask some more questions. And
Yeah.
I think that's the period we wanna shore up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think by changing your process for allowing staff to do the 30-day review while you're reviewing it, to have Acorn review it for 30 days, I mean, that gives enough time. Usually Acorn takes 2 to 3 weeks to develop their memo for you. And so that gives you enough time to see that at least a week before your initial review, that you should have their information. The developer will have that information, so they're prepared ahead of time before you even see the initial review.
Because there is potential for post-Acorn review to big changes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're coming through and going, oh,
Okay.
they really missed something.
So we deliberately said on this final, don't kick off Acorn. We don't want to give the appearance that we're accelerating this particular application any more than any other. There's so much public interest. Let's wait and see what the final plan is. We'll have our initial meeting and see if we think it's ready for Acorn's review. Well, you know what? If we had kicked off that Acorn review before, there would have been 3 changes by the time the initial meeting held, and we would have had to go back to Acorn anyway. So this is not without some risk of sending it to Acorn the first time. Now, the risk, to some degree, is covered. Jeff made a point of saying this is out of his pocketbook, and it is. So we got to be conscious of that. From a board's point of view, I think it's just additional information from a very competent and reliable vendor. I mean, Acorn has been a great resource to the town and to us, and obviously, I'm comfortable with them being the preferred vendor for this engineering review.
Yeah, no, they've done,
Oh, yeah.
they've done a
Me
good
too.
job there. It's just, for me, the timing and the approvals, that we don't get the cart before the horse and end up.
We may have to ask again.
But see, that's the thing. So if there were still things that are missing,
Yeah,
you don't have to find the application complete. You say, we need another 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or whatever it is, until these items are still
Yeah,
addressed.
I need this.
That's what I
need
prefer.
That
all the-
mechanism's, you still have that mechanism to
Yep.
make that determination.
Yeah, I need this data locked in before Acorn can really review. That's fair.
I think, from what I gather, just my feedback from, listening to developers, I think by clarifying this process, I think they would appreciate it as well,
yeah.
because they're getting the professional input. When they came to the board for initial review, I could see there was maybe some frustration that this was 30 days of waiting, and now it's just getting sent to Acorn. And so they would have appreciated having this feedback ahead of time to help in their process.
And I think it's good that we map it out and put it out there for everybody to see.
Yep.
And the expectations there, because we've also had members of the public show up wanting to speak when it's not a public hearing.
Right.
You know, and they leave all frustrated.
Yep.
And it's like, well, that's not the process, and it's not easy to find it reading through all the regs. This is a really good visual.
Yeah, it is.
And where they can get and they realize, well, this is when the public can do the input. This is where they can have their say.
Yep.
And it just makes things a little less messy, a little bit more transparent.
I do feel for the residents that do show up, because they're not used to the process that we have to
No.
follow, and, you know,
They
public,
show up
public
all-
meetings, you know,
They show up all the time, and they
Right.
will still continue to show up, whether it's public hearing or not.
Are any of us,
Some of them just want to understand the application.
Fair.
And so we are gonna do a better job at outreach with the abutters, because we do send them notice that, hey, we've received an application for an abutter, but I think we're going to include language in there about when the public hearing feedback.
You can
Include
put a
this,
part,
yeah.
part of the chart saying, hey, this is, you know, highlighted in yellow is the public's opportunity to comment.
Yep,
You know, you're in a butter, stay tuned.
yep.
And here's the links to the,
Here's the application, and come
Yeah.
to the meeting, or here's the link to the recorded meetings if they
yeah,
can't
and,
make it.
yeah, and things are gonna go into that folder, so if you're interested, have a
Yep.
looky.
do any of us disagree with this process as it's outlined?
I haven't
No,
gone
I
over it in
like the
detail.
process.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, this is good. The only thing I would request, where you've got these action items, like send to Acorn, who is the sender? Is that code enforcement?
So I am suggesting in your rules section under chapter 405, you add a separate section. So you don't have to review it tonight. We had a long night. But if you go into that drive, you should have access to the proposed rules, the draft rules, and you should be able to review that.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, we have comments in there.
Because I also, in your rules section, I got rid of, you're supposed to meet at 7 o'clock PM.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, just make it, whenever you guys, on your annual meeting, decide when you want to have your, meeting availability for the year based off your availability.
Yeah, don't chop it into stone when we
No.
have to meet.
And that's what it is right now. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
technically, you're not following the rules, but that's,
We have an annual meeting?
yeah. This is the reorganization meeting right here, yeah.
Nice.
Are you
thought it
guys
was-
fine with meeting on the first and third Wednesday?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're good? That's, I want to make sure, confirm you all for.
We're also supposed to have a manager. Do we get rid of that in the rules?
You can say the chair's not the manager. That,
I'm not
you know.
understanding.
Oh, God. No, there are things in the rules that just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
I changed a lot of, instead of going to the code enforcement officer, we're now going to planning. So in some places, I changed it to planning, and other places, it's planning or code enforcement.
So is there an
We may just
action?
say staff.
I'm missing something here. It sounds like, Nina, you're saying you have proposed a set of changes to the subdivision rules and procedures. Is that correct?
I think
I-
there will
it's
be.
online?
I proposed some, and I worked with Galen, and he proposed some, and you'll find them in the list there.
So
And is there an action?
not yet.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
No,
I
we
think,
need to
You don't want them reviewed?
We
So-
want them reviewed, but we
That's the
want you to
action.
think about them.
so I'll put a disclosure. It's been a busy week.
Think a review.
Busy week. I finished the rules, those are up. I did not add the subdivision yet, because it is quite a complex document and I need more time. So, and we're not gonna meet, so we have to send this to a public, vote, for any changes in our subdivision regs. I did get an opinion from the town manager, and she went through MMA.
We need to clarify that.
Yep.
The rules and procedures, we
Separate
can
document.
You
change.
can change those. Subdivision,
Regs
Yep.
have to go to a town vote,
Yep.
any changes to those.
correct. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
So the subdivision, we already missed the deadline to go into the November ballot, so it won't be till the spring. So there is no time-sensitive nature on amending your subdivision regulations.
I would disagree respectfully that, given our track record, that the clock is already ticking if we're going to make the spring elections.
Yes,
Very
yes.
true.
Just,
Maybe under martial law.
You're saying we're not real quick and fit, is what you're.
we're thoughtful.
Thoughtful,
right.
there you
That's
go.
the point I want to
You're
make.
not the only one. The Shade Tree Committee has missed a couple of deadlines,
Like
and we're still working on
Eeyore.
our new ordinance.
Yeah.
So take a look at that, that's homework for the board.
Right, and that would be where?
It should be on that,
a SharePoint somewhere?
the SharePoint.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
okay. Well, this is good, thank you for this. This will
Does
flow through
everyone,
now.
does anyone have, does everyone have access to that SharePoint?
I don't
Or is it
think
just
I
board
do.
members?
Any-
You mean the
anybody-
town, the abutters can go look at these proposed
And
changes?
any resident or anybody in the world really can look on the town website
Yeah.
and go to the planning board page and see it, so.
I actually like that. I'm surprised you said that, but I like that
Yep,
transparency.
and then everybody has the, real-time updates that we get. As soon as we get an email in, we put the documents in that SharePoint, so.
You have hit the ground running.
Yeah, that's
Nice
great.
job. All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion as a full-fledged member of the board.
Whoa.
I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Okay.
all in favor?
All in favor?
Yippee. Oh, man, late night.
Right on time.
Yeah.
This year's, is it